Chapter 780. Second armor piece. On the 6th day of Michael's heavenly tribulation, Adelia was flying about an endless ocean alone. The horizon seemed to be stitched with a silver line. The sea beneath her murmured with hypnotic waves. The palpitating pulse of the sea was steady and peaceful. It soothed her soul to hear the rhythmic songs the waves and the wind composed. A warm, tangy smell came from the sea as she flew. The dazzling moon glowed as much as the sun. Suddenly, she dived down into the ocean. As soon as her body touched the water, she transformed herself into her snake form. In her snake form, she was a monstrous silver snake with diamond-like scales. Her silver scales reflected the light as she swam deeper into the ocean. The deep sea was a world of its own. It was littered with plant life and corals. They glimmered like jewels and diamonds in the sea. Swarms of fish brushed past Adelia without any fear. Adelia didn't even need a light source to navigate through the sea. Instead, she had the luminous stones to light her path. She wondered how a ruin could be in the sea, but she trusted the Dark Lord. Apparently, the second armor piece was hiding in ruin under the sea. After swimming for a few minutes, Adelia noticed two corals the size of boulders next to each other. There was a crack between the two corals. That must be it, thought Adelia. She hastened her speed. For some reason, the closer she got to the boulders, the lighter she felt. She was surprised to see several runes glowing in the boulders. The runes created a beam of light that scanned Adelia from top to bottom. To her surprise, the silver light turned green as the two boulders slowly moved aside. As a result, the crack between them grew wider, revealing a path into the ground. Adelia cautiously swam into the crack. Inside the crack, everything was dark. She had to rely on the distant light. For a few minutes, she was completely blind. Even her Naga eyes didn't help her see in the dark. The darkness around her was exactly like the darkness around the Dark Lord, except this was several times stronger than she felt. Of course, it was stronger because this place was built by the past Dark Lord who was on another level compared to the current Michael. Finally, she saw the light at the end of the tunnel. She hastened her speed. When she reached the light, something pulled her into it. Suddenly, she was standing in a dungeon rather than in the deep sea. She looked around the place. Everywhere she turned, she could see nothing but dark walls. She took a step forward as a torch beside her lit up. One by one, torches lit up, lighting the place. The place creeped out Adelia. She almost regretted taking the task. At first, the Dark Lord considered sending Saber to retrieve the armor piece. However, Adelia asked the Dark Lord to give her the task because she wanted to clear her mind alone. Compared to searching for the god-killing arrows, retrieving the armor piece seemed like a walk in the park to her. But her relief was short-lived. She noticed countless runes lit up in the walls. As soon as they started to glow, Adelia felt her cultivation being suppressed. Her power fell from the half-immortal stage to the fusion stage and then to the body refining stage. In a couple of seconds, she became powerless. Fucking hell! Adelia cursed the place. She tapped the device around her wrist as the device radiated a dim red light. Soon, her cultivation level rose up to the body strengthening stage. The arch-energy crystal within the device couldn't raise her power to the half-immortal stage, but it was better than being powerless. Aren't you a treasure to have? Adelia smiled at the device around her wrist. Despite its size and look, this device was the most powerful and valuable thing probably in the entire world. It enabled its wearer to cultivate even within the void line. She still couldn't believe the Dark Lord managed to build such a device all by himself. If it wasn't for this device, she would have been powerless by now. But after seeing the place makes people powerless, Adelia didn't dare to underestimate it. She cautiously walked forward. On her way, she tried to contact Gaia through the earpiece, only to fail. Looks like I am alone, Adelia sighed. Yet again, this was what she wanted. Some alone time from everyone, including her daughter. As much as she loved Gaia, she hated being nagged. Not a single day passed without Gaia asking about her father. Adelia even asked the Dark Lord not to ponder about Gaia's real father. That was something Adelid did not wish to discuss with anyone. Adelia made herself forward with the silence being her companion. She thought about everything that happened in her life. But her train of thought was suddenly interrupted by a rustling noise. She halted her steps, focusing on the darkness before her. She could mildly hear some footsteps. Slowly, she placed her hand on the katana dangling on her waist. She flicked the sheath as the katana popped out with a clicking sound. The air suddenly started to reek of blood and pungent rotting skin. Unfortunately, she was familiar with this smell. The last time she smelled something putrid was when she visited Dalar's workshop on the undead island with Gaia. Coupled with the slow footsteps and the smell, she had a good guess about what was approaching her. Soon, a grayish-skinned figure with dead eyes staggered toward Adelia. She could smell the toxic pong from their body odors. Their crazy, diseased eyes would terrify an oblivious man. To Adelia, they were nothing but annoyances. She took a step forward, keeping her hand on the katana's hilt. The undead tilted its head as it reached out toward Adelia. When it was just an arm's reach away, Adelia unsheathed her katana as the zombie's head flew away from its body. The decapitation happened so quickly, like a flash of lightning. Her katana even formed a white line in the air. Even the Dark Lord was impressed by her sword skills, especially how she handled the katana. He used to call him the Lady Samurai, but Adelia had no idea why he called her that. The zombie staggered around without a head before falling down. Black goo oozed out of its neck as the pungent smell increased in the air. Adelia walked away from the corpse, but not before taking a flesh sample from the corpse. It was not for Dalar but for the Dark Lord. As she moved forward, she faced a couple more undead. Regardless of the undead, she avoided using spells. She was under the sea, and the structure seemed ancient. She didn't want to risk destroying the place with her spells. Besides, she did not need spells to kill the undead. The further she went, the more undead she faced. But no matter how many undead were on her path, they all met the same fate. Each katana swing decapitated a zombie. Her moves were deadly and precise. After a while, the undead stopped appearing. Silence fell over the dungeon once again. Where were they coming from? Adelia asked herself. The runes flowing in the walls seemed awfully similar to Elidar's creations. E dash E E. This time travel thing fucks with my brain. Adelia kicked the wall. She wondered how this place would remain still if the previous Dark Lord reset the entire universe. The only explanation she had was the previous Dark Lord was powerful enough to leave some places untouched by the time-traveling array. Otherwise, the first energy and the armor pieces couldn't exist in the current timeline. She continued to walk in utter silence for another 30 minutes. Luckily, she came across no undead. Still, she didn't feel relieved. On the contrary, the silence and the lack of undead creeped her out. If the past Dark Lord had built this place, she knew he must have placed traps and obstacles to stop outsiders from getting to the armor piece. Her instincts were proven right when she heard a loud thud from several meters ahead of her. The ground started to shake as though something gigantic was approaching her. She halted her steps and waited for it to reveal itself. A few seconds later, she vaguely saw a giant bat-like creature walking on two legs toward her. Grrrhhhhhhhhh. The creature roared at Adelia. It looked at her with eyes burning with rage. Suddenly, it pounded its chest like a gorilla. So the past Dalar managed to create some fucked-up creatures. Huh. Adelia snickered. Judging by how ugly the creature was, she knew it must be one of Dalar's creations. No one in the Dark Lord's army could create such an ugly abomination except for Dalar. The creature slowly moved forward. Each of its claws looked as sharp as the katana in her hand. Despite its ugliness, the creature seemed to possess some intelligence. Otherwise, it would have dashed forward instead of slowly taking steps. Since the path wasn't wide enough to move around, they had to face each other head-on. The creature growled as Adelia took a step forward. Adelia's grip around the hilt tightened. She looked ambler in front of the 8-foot monster before her. It waited for Adelia to make the first move. She didn't disappoint the creature as she dashed forward. At that moment, she had no idea this creature was one of the many obstacles created by the Dark Lord. To get the armor pieces, she had to overcome each and every obstacle. Chapter 781. The trials for the second armor piece. The creature deflected Adelia's katana with its claw. Sparks flew from the collision. Adelia almost lost the katana due to the massive force. She quickly slid under the creature. The creature stomped the ground as Adelia leaped away from it. Grrrhhh! The creature roared. It opened its thin wings. Adelia anticipated the creature's next attack. As it flapped its wings, Adelia raised her hand, creating a jade shield to block the wind blast. The creature did not back off with one flap. Instead, it flapped its wings again and again. The dungeon began to tremble. Bits and pieces of the ceiling crumbled down. "Oh no! You are going to kill us both!" Adelia snickered. She quickly dashed at the creature to prevent it from destroying the place. The creature swung its front legs. Adelia slid under its arms and cut its thigh. Blood spurted out as the creature roared in pain. The creature stumbled down. Her blade cut several inches deep into its thighs. The creature stomped the ground. Adelia tried to leap away, but the shock wave blasted her onto the wall behind before she could escape. The creature's eyes burned with rage and pain. To Adelia's surprise, the creature picked a handful of soil and rubbed it in its wound. The creature again surprised Adelia by taking the torch and burning its wound. Finally, the bleeding stopped. Adelia had to admire the creature's intelligence. This time, the creature dashed at Adelia with lightning speed. Even Adelia failed to roll out of its path. As a result, the creature swatted Adelia like a bug. The force threw Adelia onto a wall. She coughed blood. Without twisting any second, Adelia quickly retrieved a healing potion from her space ring and chugged it down her throat. She immediately felt revitalized. Cuts and bruises on her body faded away. Seeing her use the healing potion, the creature shrieked. It pounded its chest as though it hated her using the potion. "Do you hate that ugly?" Adelia antagonized the creature. Once again, the creature dashed at her faster than before. Adelia did not move. On the contrary, she pressed her feet on the ground and stayed still. When the creature swung its claws, Adelia bent backward, evading the claws. After missing the target, the creature lost its balance for a second. Adelia immediately utilized this by leaping onto the creature's back. She used arch energy to speed up her moves. Before the creature could retaliate, Adelia landed straight on its back. She plunged the katana into the creature's neck. She was about to slice its neck, cutting the cord, when the creature jumped upwards. Since Adelia was on its back, she hit the ceiling pretty hard. The force almost turned her inside into outside. She fell off its back as her katana was still stuck into its back. The creature quickly grabbed Adelia and hit her against the ground. It sent Adelia flying with a single kick. Adelia's vision blurred. Blood oozed out of her nostrils and mouth. "I am fucking done with this," Adelia coughed. The creature pounded its chest once again. It waited for Adelia to use the healing potion. On the contrary, Adelia picked herself up without using the healing potion. Her pupils flickered. When she blinked, her human pupils turned vertically slit like a snake's. Under the creature's furious gaze, Adelia's body transformed. The creature took a step back in feet in a few moments. She went from human to giant snake. She stood 9 feet tall. "Hss!" Adelia hissed. She slithered toward the creature. It hit Adelia with its claws, yet its claws couldn't even graze her skin. Her body moved around the creature. The creature tried to leap away, but Adelia coiled around the creature. The creature was trapped. She slowly squeezed the creature with her body. Grrrr! The creature roared as it violently swung its claws left and right. Adelia didn't feel anything. Her skin scales were like steel. No matter how hard the creature tried, It couldn't harm Adelia. The creature's roar slowly turned into a scream. Its eyes glimmered with pain. Slowly, Adelia crushed the creature's bones. The more she squeezed the creature, the louder the sickening crunch sounded. The creature's scream slowly lost its volume. Gradually, the creature stopped moving. Blood spurted out of every pore in its body. Suddenly, a stream of blood sprayed out of the creature's body. The creature's body looked crooked. Adelia moved her head above the creature. She slowly opened her mouth as jade smoke flowed from her mouth. The jade smoke enveloped the creature, slowly turning its body into ashes. Adelia's katana fell down with a clinking sound. Finally, Adelia transformed herself back into her human form. The creature was reduced to a hot pile of ash. "Ugly bastard," Adelia snickered. She picked up the katana and unsheathed it. After killing the creature, Adelia resumed her journey. The creature made her realize this place was more dangerous than she initially thought. She became vigilant, focusing on her surroundings. Luckily, the torches lit up further she moved. Once again, everything became silent. At that moment, even a point-dropping sound would sound like a bell. Only her shadow and the silence accompanied her forward. She wondered how long it took the Dark Lord to build this dungeon. Although she was a half-immortal, the runes around her suppressed her cultivation. Without the device around her wrist, she couldn't have survived the creature. If someone else had entered this place somehow, they would have been the creature's food by now. The silence lasted for a few more minutes. Then, she began to hear the undead growling once again. Compared to the creature, these undeads were just an annoyance in her path. She thought about using spells, but the walls and ceiling looked unstable. Before getting her hands on the armor piece, she couldn't risk flooding the dungeon. The undeads staggered toward her from the darkness. She counted at least 20 undeads before her. Despite their number, Adelia showed no signs of distress. Instead, she just smiled. Once again, she unsheathed her katana. With just a swing, she cleaved 2 heads clean off their shoulders. Unlike the creature she faced earlier, these undeads possessed no intelligence. Even after Adelia killed 2, the others reached out to her as though nothing had happened. Adelia did not even flinch as she cut down the zombies without slowing down. Her sword swings were several times faster than the zombies. Before they could touch her, they lost their heads. The black goo splattered across the dark walls and the ground. As much as she loved killing the undead, she reeked of rotten eggs and meat because of the black goo. Fortunately, there was no one beside her. After cutting down the undead, she saw a ray of light in the distance. She hastened her steps. A few minutes later, the narrow tunnel opened into a spacious hall. The moment she stepped into the hall, the place lit up. She noticed a couple of huge braziers with blue flames burning atop. In the dazzling blue light produced by the flames, Adelia noticed several statues around the hall. But what drew her attention more was the black chest in the center. The chest was sat on top of a pillar. When she looked closer, she noticed a giant lock with 5 keyholes. The ray of light peeked through the ceiling and illuminated the dark chest. The armor piece must be inside. Adelia mumbled but didn't take another step forward. She looked around the hall, counting the 5 statues. 5 keyholes, 5 statues. "I have a bad feeling about this," said Adelia. Each of the statues looked distinct. One of them resembled the bat creature she fought earlier. The others looked weird and bizarre. Adelia took a deep breath before taking another step. Deep down, she expected something to happen. Just as she expected, one of the statues trembled the moment she stepped forward. This statue looked like a gargoyle. Pieces of stone crumbled down from the statue, revealing its jade skin. The creature was the size of an adult lion. At least the gargoyle wasn't as big as the bat creature earlier. That was a subtle advantage for Adelia in this battle. The gargoyle-looking creature shook itself, yanking the remaining stone pieces on its body. Adelia vaguely saw a golden key on its neck. If she had to guess, she would say this key would fit the keyhole in the lock. As she took another step, the creature noticed her. It locked its crimson-red eyes with her. Coincidentally, the creature was exactly as strong as she was. It was at the body-strengthening stage. She closed her eyes for a moment to focus on her inner energy. Unfortunately, the runes were still suppressing her cultivation. The creature scratched the ground with its front legs before running toward her. Since they were both at the same cultivation stage, it was a battle of strategy and technique instead of spells and energy. When the creature was just a meter away from Adelia, she stabbed it with her katana. Cling! The katana didn't even penetrate an inch. Instead, Adelia's hands went numb. She felt as though she had stabbed a boulder. The creature hit Adelia with its head and sent her flying. While she was in the air, the creature bit the katana. The creature spat the katana to the other side of the hall. Adelia growled. As she picked herself up, the creature roared. To her surprise, the roar turned into a peal of laughter. Adelia was stunned. She didn't expect the creature to laugh at her. Moreover, it was mocking laughter. She burned with rage being ridiculed by a creature such as this. "It's on!" Adelia cracked her knuckles. Her eyes glimmered with rage. Without waiting for the creature to attack her, she dashed at it. She didn't retrieve any weapons from her space ring. Instead, she chose to fight with her bare hands. Chapter 782. Poison-spewing snake Adelia and the gargoyle clashed in the middle. Their collision made sparks fly. Instead of using a weapon, Adelia fought with her bare hands. The gargoyle raised both its front legs to crush her, but Adelia grabbed its legs and overpowered the gargoyle. Even without cultivation power, Adelia was able to match the gargoyle's raw strength. The gargoyle tried to take a bite of Adelia's head, yet it couldn't reach her. "Arg!" Adelia roared as she pushed back the gargoyle. Every bit of muscle in Adelia's body bulged up. Purple veins appeared on her skin as her pupils became slit vertically. Eventually, she pushed the gargoyle against the wall. While the gargoyle was struggling, Adelia kicked it in the leg. The gargoyle roared. She kicked it in the leg in the same spot again and again until cracks appeared in its leg made of jade. Regardless of what it was made of, the gargoyle roared in pain just like any other beast would. The gargoyle stumbled down as it matched Adelia's height. As soon as it met Adelia's gaze, the gargoyle became crazed with pain and rage. It violently tried to munch her head with its big mouth. Adelia moved her head left and right, avoiding the gargoyle's mouth by mere inches. They were at a stalemate for a few moments until Adelia lifted the gargoyle by its leg and smashed it on the ground. It happened so quickly. Her raw strength was beyond any typical body-strengthening stage cultivators. The gargoyle didn't expect such strength and movement from her. The ground cracked by the collision. Without giving the gargoyle any time to retaliate, Adelia sent it flying with a kick, just like how it kicked her earlier. She cracked her neck. The gargoyle struggled to get back to its feet. The crack in its leg grew wider when it stood up. Adelia locked her gaze with the golden key around its neck. As though the gargoyle realized her intention, it looked at the key for a moment. Adelia once again dashed at the gargoyle as it flapped its jade wings to leap into the air. Hovering in mid-air, the gargoyle opened its mouth. Several jade spikes shot out of its mouth. Adelia managed to roll out, evading the rain of spikes. "You got some tricks, huh?" Adelia snickered. With a single jump, she leaped into the air. In mid-air, she punched the gargoyle right in the face. When he first met the gargoyle's jade face, it sounded like an explosion went off. The gargoyle went crashing down. Before it could get back to its feet, Adelia shot toward the gargoyle. She landed on the gargoyle's head. "Grrrhh!" The gargoyle roared. However, Adelia grabbed its jade wings and ripped them off with brute strength. She sat on top of the gargoyle, locking its head using her arms. She squeezed the gargoyle's neck as hard as she could. Cracks slowly formed around the gargoyle's neck. Tried to stand only to fail. Adelia kept pushing it down and squeezing its neck. The cracks grew wider and wider until jade pieces crumbled down from its body. The gargoyle's feet squirmed as the glow in its eyes slowly faded away. A while later, more and more jade pieces crumbled down. Soon its head bobbed without life. Finally, Adelia roared as she ripped off the gargoyle's neck from its shoulder. As soon as she destroyed the gargoyle's neck, its entire body turned into nothing but jade dust. Only the golden key remained intact. Adelia breathed heavily on the ground. She slowly grabbed the key. "One out, for more to go," Adelia said. Adelia picked herself up. With the key in her hand, she made her way to the chest in the center. The chest trembled slightly when she put the key inside the lock. Afterward, dark smoke escaped from the chest before floating toward another statue. It was a 9-foot cobra with wings on top. Adelia quickly took out a healing potion and emptied it down her throat. Just like before, the stone statue trembled as pieces of stone crumbled down. Soon, a purple-skinned snake came to life from the statue. Its emerald green eyes glimmered with killing intent. The snake slithered around the hall instead of attacking Adelia. The blue flames from the brazier illuminated the diamond scales on the snake. The snake almost matched Adelia's true form. It hissed at Adelia yet kept its distance from her. The snake seemed like it was studying Adelia. Since she was not in a hurry, she waited for the snake to make its first move. Moreover, Adelia tried to find the key on the snake's body. To her surprise, she saw a glimmer inside the snake's mouth when it hissed at her. Adelia slowly stepped toward her katana. Unlike the gargoyle's stone-like skin, the snake's skin seemed soft and vulnerable to her blade. The snake stopped moving. Instead, it turned its head toward the katana. The snake hissed as it realized Adelia's intention. Finally, it slowly moved toward Adelia. When it was just a few meters away, the snake suddenly swung its tail. Adelia quickly managed to jump in the air, avoiding the tail. She dashed at the katana before landing back on the ground. The snake surprised Adelia by spitting a purple glob at Adelia. She swayed her body to the side in the air, barely evading the glob. When it flew past her face, Adelia smelled a nauseating stench. There was no doubt in her mind that this glob was poison. The ground sizzled like deep frying. The glob of poison was powerful enough to roast the ground itself. Adelia could only imagine what would happen if the poisonous glob landed on her skin. The snake continued to shoot out purple globs as Adelia finally grabbed the katana. One of the globs landed right where the katana was a moment ago. She wasn't sure the katana could survive the poison. As a naga, Adelia was able to gauge how poisonous the glob was. According to her, this purple glob was several times more potent than the poison in her poison gland. Adelia dashed out of the poison glob's trajectory. For a few moments, she zigzagged through the hall, evading the globs. She waited for the snake to stop shooting. When it did, Adelia dashed at the snake. The snake's giant body slowed its movements. Adelia's human form made her nimble and agile. As a result, she cut the snake before it could move away. As she hoped, the snake's skin wasn't as tough as the gargoyle's. Her katana cut the snake deep. Purplish blood spurted out of its body. Even its blood was poisonous. She quickly swung her katana, yanking the blood off her blade. The snake hissed. She used the arch energy to leap into the air. Since it was a snake, Adelia targeted its eyes. If it couldn't see her, she would be at an advantage. To the snake's surprise, Adelia raised her hand as 2 golden beams shot out of her hands. The snake was caught off guard. It did not expect Adelia to use a spell. Thanks to the device around her wrist, she cast a spell. The 2 beams penetrated the snake's eyes. Grrhhhhh. The snake roared in agony. The scream almost tore Adelia's eardrums. The snake's body violently twitched. Adelia pressed her advantage by boosting her speed with arch energy. She flew around the snake, cutting the snake repeatedly. Unfortunately, the snake was too thick to cut its head with a single cut. Hence, she had to cut around her neck again and again, one small cut at a time. Suddenly, the snake began to shoot a poisonous cloud. The purple cloud of poison enveloped the hall. For a moment, Adelia's throat burnt as her vision turned blurry. She just took a whiff and the poison already affected her body. But being the mother of the Dark Lord's fiancé came with a few perks. One of them was a special mask and antidote for poisons. She quickly put the mask on her face before she lost consciousness. Then she immediately drank the silver potion. Gradually, her vision cleared up. Just to be safe, Adelia drank a healing potion. She was almost tempted to use the berserker pill Gaia gave her. But she chose not to. The snake was strong but not strong enough to give Adelia a headache. The snake would have been a bloody paste if she could use her cultivation. Furthermore, Adelia was a battle junkie just like Gaia. The stronger the opponent was, the more excited she would feel. Simply put, Adelia wanted the battle to last long. Battles calmed her mind and soul in her own twisted, strange way. She patiently waited for the snake to stop spewing poisonous clouds. Surprisingly, it took almost 5 minutes. Only then did the purple poison in the air clear. The snake's movements slowed down. Adelia knew the snake was exhausted. Coupled with the cuts in its body and the blind eyes, the snake was on its way to greet the death. She just had to speed up the process. Once again, Adelia dashed at the snake. Considering the snake was blinded by her, it had no idea that Adelia was on her way to end its life. Because it was a snake, Adelia felt a bit of pity for it. Hence, she just leaped into the air and stabbed the snake right between the eyes. The snake stopped its twitching all of a sudden. The snake let out a groan before collapsing down. Just like the gargoyle, the snake's body turned into a pile of dust after it died. The golden key glimmered within the ash. She picked up the key from the ground. 3 to go, said Adelia. She took a deep breath as she went to put the sky in the lock. But before she could do that, Adelia drank a healing potion. For a few moments, she just took deep breaths, because she knew that another statue would come to life when she used the key in the lock. Therefore, she wanted to take a few moments to rest her body. Each of the 3 remaining statues looked terrifying. Anyone would have been worried, but not Adelia. She looked excited to face 3 more beasts. Chapter 783. Something related to the Dark Lord. While Adelia was fighting the beasts to get the second piece of the armor left behind by the past Dark Lord, Saber was heading for Ysirius. His destination was the Aqua Palace. Sadie received a piece of information about something valuable that was about to be auctioned. Surprisingly, this item had some kind of connection to the Dark Lord. Hence, Saber attended the auction under the Dark Queen's order. Since the Dark Lord was in his heavenly tribulation, most of his subordinates were on the floating mountain except for Saber. Rather than participating in the auction himself, Saber was ordered to be a spectator. If the item had any significance to the Dark Lord, Saber was ordered to track down the buyer and steal it. Gaia didn't bother to spend millions of gold coins in the auction, especially when they were in a financial crisis. By the time Saber reached the outskirts, the darkness had enveloped the world. Although Saber had no need to worry about the daylight anymore, he still loved the night more than the day. On a pitch-dark night, the Aqua Palace was fairly quiet. Several groups of guards patrolled the island, and each of them was at the soul refining stage. The Aqua Palace spared no expense in armoring them up. They were armored to the teeth, and their armor glowed in the night due to the runes engraved in them. As Saber approached the island, he noticed a sliver of glow around the island. Apparently, they placed new arrays and runes to ensure the island's defense. The last thing the Aqua Palace wanted was an attack from the Dark Lord. But Saber knew the Dark Lord had more pressing concerns than attacking the Aqua Palace for no reason. As far as Saber was concerned, the world was so wrong about the Dark Lord. He wasn't as evil as the Guardians painted him to be. Saber heard hushed discussions and commands from all over Aqua Palace. Most conversations were about the royal dragon skeleton the Aqua Palace dug out recently. Neither Saber nor the Dark Lord had any interest in the skeleton. Hence, Saber paid no attention to these conversations. But none of them talked about the mysterious item Saber was looking for. The auction was scheduled to begin when the sun rose. Since Saber had arrived at the island earlier, he sat under a tree, enjoying some peace and quiet. He even closed his eyes to take a quick nap. The night quickly passed. Sun broke the dark skies from the horizon, showering the island with its golden rays. Saber's eyelids twitched as he slowly opened his eyes. The Aqua Palace had been decorated with ribbons and lanterns as nobles and commoners streamed in and out of the building. The VIPs were flying in another direction to enter the place using a separate entrance. Today was the first day of the Aqua Palace auction. Last time, the Dark Lord himself honored the auction by participating. This time, the Aqua Palace hoped he wouldn't arrive. They had arrays and security mechanisms to catch him if he did. Unknowing to the people, the Guardians were roaming the island just in case. In the past, the auction time had always been the busiest day in Ysirius. Thousands of people would come from every part of the continent to watch and participate in the auction. However, today was an exception. Compared to the last time, Saber saw fewer people on the island. As a regular to the auction, Saber could tell the decrease in the crowd. The sun slowly rose into the air, emitting a red glow that bathed the lands in its warm light. More and more people began to gather at the Aqua Palace. People found it extremely difficult to walk to the entrance without being squeezed. Saber was among the first 30 people who entered the building. After he entered, he heard firecrackers and a thunderous bell. They symbolized the start of the auction. Crowd or no crowd, the Aqua Palace began the auction right on time. Just like any other organization, the Aqua Palace also raised the entry fee. They charged 70 gold coins per person, unlike the last time when they charged 50 gold coins. Although this price hike made a small group unhappy as usual, it did not stop them from paying. No commoner would have dared to participate if someone charged 70 gold coins in Elon or Azer continent. But this wasn't Elon or Azer. In our continent, even a commoner could spare 70 gold coins. There was a reason why everyone called the R continent the richest. After the gates opened up for the auction house, the people that already had tickets and had been waiting outside for a very long time began to enter through the entrance in a straight line. Saber covered his face with a gray hood. He slipped into the crowd, slowly following the people to the auction hall. As he reached the inner halls, a large grandeur hall greeted his eyes. The space was filled with neat rows of seats for as far as the eye could see. There were at least 3,000 seats around the hall. The auction hall had 2 stories worth of seats. Installed on the sides of every seat were dozens of private rooms for VIPs. A tinted glass wall separated each room. The VIPs could clearly see the outside through the tinted glass, but no one on the outside could see what was happening inside. Everyone focused on the stage in the middle where the items would be auctioned. Several stands remained in a neat row in the center. They were all covered with red cloth to prevent people from seeing through. Finding a relatively isolated seat, Saber calmly sat down and waited for the auction to start. People all around him were slowly starting to settle down as well. Eventually, the auction house was filled up. One couldn't find a single empty seat. Changing the auction hall was a great tactic by the Aqua Palace. If they had held this auction in the hall they used last year, many seats would have been empty. This would have ruined the Aqua Palace's reputation. They knew there would be fewer crowds than the last time. Hence, they chose a smaller hall. The Dark Lord was one of the biggest reasons for the decrease in the crowd. But the Aqua Palace refused to admit that. Just as the final seats were taken and everyone had settled down, Saber heard another set of firecrackers exploding. People curiously stared at the stands as the red cloth slowly began to rise. One by one, the concealed items were revealed to the crowd. A few moments later, an elderly man descended to the center from the sky. He was the auctioneer, Rixton, the same man who auctioned the items when Michael was here. Rixton's eyes swept the audience as he cleared his throat before introducing himself. Honored guests, I thank you all for participating in our Aqua Palace's annual auction. I, Rixton Bash, will host this year's auction. I hope everyone will buy an item or items they longed for. Rixton paused for a moment to clear his throat once more before continuing to speak. Due to recent events, you may notice more guards and security arrays. They are in place to safeguard the people. So rest assured you can be at peace. Now, without further ado, I'll declare that the auction has officially begun. Rixton looked over his shoulder as a young, elegant woman slowly walked to his side. She gently put her hand into the first glass box and lifted up a golden pill. She raised her hand so everyone could clearly see the energy radiating from the pill. Honored guests, we shall now auction away the first item. Rixton looked at the pill before turning his gaze back at the crowd. Dash? E? E? The very first item is a blood lily pill. For the honored guests unfamiliar with this item, only 12 pills exist in the world. They were concocted by legendary alchemist Ingrid Stenham. Many people looked clueless. As though Rixton had expected this reaction from the crowd, he explained further. Ingrid Stenham was a 6-star alchemist and the first supreme guardian of the Guardian Guild. Her mastery of alchemy is still unmatched. These pills were one of the few gifts she left behind before ascending to the higher realms. Those who looked clueless gasped after Rixon explained. Even an oblivious man knew about the status of a supreme guardian. Moreover, Rixton said she had ascended to higher realism. This was enough to make people shudder in shock. As a member of the Order, Saber knew everything about Ingrid Stenham. For instance, he knew that she was one of the Mazeroth founders. Consuming this pill would clear any bottlenecks in your cultivation. Furthermore, you won't have any bottlenecks in the future at all, said Rixon. Many nobles leaned forward in their seats. Their eyes lit up as many were stuck at the same stage for decades due to bottlenecks. This pill could finally enable them to break through to the next stage. Rixton smiled as he knew the nobles would go crazy for the pill. Saber was surprised that the auction began with a priceless pill such as this. The starting bid for the Blood Lily pill is 5 million gold coins. Every new bid will add an additional 1 million minimum. You may begin bidding. Rixton's thunderous voice swept across the hall. 6 million, 8 million, 9 million. As Rixton expected, the nobles fought like starving dogs for the pill. In a few minutes, the pill's price went from 5 million to 15 million. The price was nothing compared to having no bottlenecks in their lives. Saber calmly watched the nobles fight for the pills with a faint smile on his face. The Order had no need for such a pill when they had the Dark Lord. After a fierce battle, the pill bottle was sold to the highest bidder for 25 million gold coins. Saber's eyes were focused on the items behind Rixton. Among them, none seemed to have any connection to the Dark Lord. Maybe he was wrong, but waiting was the only option he had. The pendant on Saber's neck dimly glowed as Gaia was looking at the auction through the pendant from the dark ocean. Sadie better be right about this. Saber heard the Dark Queen's voice in his head. Chapter 784. Third armor piece. Rixton auctioned several interesting items for humongous prices after the pill. But Saber had no interest in any of them. Nothing seemed to have any connection to the Dark Lord at all. He may not have a clear idea about the item, but he wasn't stupid either. He knew better than to think a spell scroll or a rune mastery book had any significance to the Dark Lord. The auction continued for another hour until Rixton announced a short break before continuing. Many hated the hustle of leaving the hall and coming back. Hence, they stayed still. But the nobles and the VIPs went outside to take some fresh air. Meanwhile, Saber looked at his surroundings and noticed a few guardians among them. Saber doubted the soul-refining stage guards and a few fusion stage guardians could stop the Dark Lord if he decided to attack. Fortunately, Saber concealed his cultivation stage with the help of Elidar's rune. Otherwise, his fusion stage cultivation might have raised a few eyebrows. Being a fusion stage cultivator in the VIP rooms was one thing, but sitting among the commoners was not normal. The guardians would have immediately alerted the Supreme Guardian if they had seen Saber. Soon, seconds turned into minutes, and minutes turned into hours. Saber waited patiently for Rixton to return. He hoped Rixton would bring new items to auction. As Saber expected, several guards accompanied Rixton to the stage. They carried another set of items covered with red cloth. Once again, the bell rang, following the sound of firecrackers. The crowd gradually shut their mouth. Rixton waited for the crowd to turn completely silent. A while later, Rixon cleared his throat. "Thank you for your patience, ladies and gentlemen. Let us begin the second part of the auction without delay," said Rixton. He looked over his shoulder as a soldier flicked his wrist. A bright light shot out of the soldier's finger. The very next moment, something covered in silver cloth appeared before Rixton. Saber slightly leaned forward. Unlike the other items, this one was covered in thick silver cloth. Besides, the soldiers around the item looked a bit confused and flustered. Saber saw a glimmer of doubt and uneasiness in Rixton's eyes. Just like Saber, everyone in the auction hall had their eyes glued to the black cloth-covered thing. Saber faintly heard a faint crackling noise coming from the thing. Rixton let the people speculate for some time. Eventually, Rixton placed his hand on the cloth. As the host slowly lifted the silver cloth up, the hidden object underneath was finally revealed to the eagerly anticipating crowd. Underneath the cloth was a piece of armor. To be more precise, a grayish arm armor. Could cover one's entire right arm from shoulder to wrist. The armor looked ancient. Tiny crimson-red lightning bolts crackled around the armor piece. Saber was stunned. This armor piece, without a doubt, belonged to the Dark Lord because he had seen another piece of the complete set. Although the armor piece brought to the Dark Ocean by Adelia was in much better condition than this one, it certainly belonged to that set. For a moment, Saber's mind went completely blank. According to the Dark Lord, each piece was severely guarded and hidden from the rest of the world. But the Aqua Palace somehow managed to get their hands on the armor piece. The armor looked like it had been buried in the ground for decades. Saber could barely see the runes and designs engraved in the armor. Surprisingly, the armor piece radiated no energy. Except for the red lightning bolts coiling around the armor, it looked no better than worn-out armor. People looked confused and interested at the same time. What the fuck am I looking at? Is that an armor piece? Saber heard Gaia's shocked voice. How did they get it? Gaia was stunned. She took a closer look at the armor through the spider on Saber's neck. Judging by its look, the armor piece looked similar to the other. The engraving of a skull on the shoulder plate looked exactly like the Dark Lord's symbol. So unless this was an elaborate scheme to trap the Dark Lord once again, Gaia knew that the armor piece must be genuine. The armor piece sat in a glass box under everyone's curious gazes. Looking at the armor, many began to murmur among themselves. What kind of armor is that? It looks rather worn out. Where is the rest of the armor set? Let's hear what Rixton has to say about the armor piece. It looks special to me. Yeah. Look at the lightning bolts around it. Red lightning. It's definitely something special. If I had to bet, I wouldn't go past 1,000,000 gold coins. After the armor was revealed, the originally quiet auction house instantly buzzed to life. Everyone's gazes fell on the armor in the glass box. The sounds of intense discussion and gasps of amazement overlapped ceaselessly. Among the people present, quite a few had lived for dozens of years yet had never seen such an armor piece. Ladies and gentlemen, Rixton silenced the murmuring with his words. His thunderous voice swept across the hall as the discussions about the armor gradually died down. Rixton smiled, looking at the hundreds of thousands of people attending the auction, and loudly declared, "Our team of adventurers recently unearthed this armor in Gimgular after the battle between two fusion stage cultivators," said Rixton. Everyone in the hall knew about this big battle that happened a few months ago in a dwarven kingdom. Apparently, a dwarven royal guard and a rogue dwarven cultivator went all in to kill each other. Since the dwarves were usually battle-hungry fiends, no one was surprised at their battle. However, their battle reduced several villages to ruin. Apparently, their battle happened to happen above a dungeon built to guard the armor piece. Because of time and the effects of the battle, the armor piece was unearthed by the adventurers. The battle lasted a week until the rogue dwarf managed to escape Gimgular. Noah tried to stop the battle, but the dwarves gave no face to the Guardian Guild. They even rejected the Empress' request to send dwarven forces to stop the battle before more dwarves became homeless or dead. If Michael had known their battle would expose his armor piece, he would have taken out the two dwarves and retrieved the armor himself. According to our scholars, this armor piece was forged using an unknown, or which had gone either extinct or came to this world from higher realms. People gasped in shock. Rixton's words piqued their interest in the armor piece. As an experienced auctioneer, Rixton knew how to raise an item's value with just words. This armor piece is engraved with several runes, which we believe might lead to the other armor pieces. In its full form, our scholars believe this armor could withstand a half-immortal's attack. Rixton paused for a moment. Although we do not recommend it, One can melt down the armor to forge an unstoppable weapon out of this strange ore. I am going to fucking kill that son of a bitch, Gaia roared after hearing Rixton's words. Just the thought of someone melting the armor piece made Gaia's blood boil. As you can see, this armor creates these bolts of red lightning. I was assured that we could have unearthed the armor's secrets if we had more time. But the Aqua Palace has decided it's better on your hands than on ours, said Rixton. He omitted that their scholars completely failed to learn anything about the armor piece. They knew better than anyone this armor was useless without the rest of the pieces. In fact, the Aqua Palace didn't even battle test the armor. They feared any attacks on the armor piece would wreck it completely, thus making the armor piece a scrap. In other words, the Dark Lord made sure even if someone had managed to get the piece of armor somehow, they wouldn't be able to use it at all. The Aqua Palace had a rule not to wear any armors they unearthed from unknown ruins. They came up with this rule when someone in the Aqua Palace wore armor cursed by a powerful elven witch. The Aqua Palace almost went extinct at that time. Ever since then, they had a strict rule not to wear or use anything unknown to them. This rule saved them once again as the Dark Lord armor piece was engraved with deadly runes. They would have turned to dust if someone else had worn the armor. The armor piece may look old and worn out, but it was still capable of killing people. Whoever wins the bid for the armor will get 1 hour with a 5-star runemaster and blacksmith from the Aqua Palace. You can learn more about this armor from the best of the bests, said Rixton. Some of the VIPs became really excited by the armor. They were the collectors who invested in ancient items such as this armor. Idiots didn't even consider the armor might belong to the Dark Lord, Gaia snickered, but she couldn't blame them either. The past Dark Lord left these armor pieces before resetting the timeline. No one, even Michael, had no idea how long the past Dark Lord lived from his time. What happened to the past Dark Lord was the biggest mystery Michael had come across in his life. Fortunately, Adelia was one step closer to figuring out the previous Dark Lord's life. Let us start the bid for the armor piece. The starting price is 3 million gold coins. Each bid should increase by 2 million. Dash E 6 million. Someone from the VIP room bid for the armor. Don't let the armor piece out of your sight, Saber. When he wakes up, I want to present this to him. So don't disappoint me, Gaia said in a stern voice. You want, said Saber. 8 million, 10 million. The VIPs and the nobles continued to raise the bid. Rixton was really surprised by their bids. But he didn't know that one of the bidders was the war god of Gondolin. At that moment, both a war god and a vampire were hoping to get their hands on the armor. Only time could tell who would emerge as the victor between them. Chapter 785. War god of Gondolin. While Saber was following the third armor piece, Adelia was breathing heavily inside the dungeon. She had defeated 4 beasts and was fighting the last one. Unlike the previous 4, the last one was not any typical beast. It was just a giant blob of goo that was immune to all physical and magical attacks. She had been fighting the red blob of good for 5 hours. She was exhausted. No matter how hard she hit the blob, she couldn't hurt it at all. It neither had any limbs nor a face. Hence, it was tough for her to tell what the beast was thinking or about to do. Strangely, the blob did not attack Adelia but kept her from reaching the chest. Moreover, she didn't see any key on its body. She had a bad feeling that the key might be inside the goo, but she didn't wish to test that theory. Why? Because the blob of good stank to high heaven. Never in her life had she smelled something so putrid and nauseating. She couldn't even find something to compare the smell with. To fight the smell, she had to wear a mask on her face. Still, the smell managed to penetrate the mask itself. What the fuck are you? Adelia growled. She raised her hand as a stream of fire shot out of her hands. She had already tried to burn the blob only to fail, but she hoped this time would be different. On the contrary, the red flames just brushed past the blob, causing no harm to it. Adelia was annoyed to the point she dashed at the blob with her katana raised. She wanted to chop the blob into countless pieces. The blob quickly moved in front of the chest, shielding it with its body. It was really surprising how fast the blob moved to protect the shield. She wondered what would have happened if she had brought backup. Thinking about it, she almost regretted not bringing Saber or his men with her. She cut the blob in anger. Felt like she had cut a wax statue. The cut in its body closed in a blink of an eye. Arg! Adelia roared as she raised her hand. In a blink of an eye, a chakra appeared above the blob. Jade spikes shot out from the spinning chakra. The spikes penetrated the blob into its body. However, the spikes barely harmed the blob. It just absorbed these spikes with its gooey body. She even tried to turn herself into her true form and attack the blob, yet everything led to utter failure. This blob was immune to everything. "Come on. Out of the way, ugly," Adelia said, leaping away from the blob. The blob did not respond to her. Not a single peep came out of its mouth. Since the blob hadn't attacked her yet, she just sat down and breathed heavily. The blob remained still before the chest instead of attacking her. It seemed to have no intention of attacking, nor it had any offensive capabilities. This blob was created to protect the chest and exhaust the opponent to death. The blob was one of the creations of Dalar when he worked under the past Dark Lord. The Dalar in the current timeline was still years away from creating this blob. In a sense, Adelia was really lucky to face creations from the past. Adelia was tempted to contact Gaia or the Dark Lord himself only if he hadn't triggered a heavenly tribulation. Adelia knew for certain he could destroy this thing in a blink of an eye. Unfortunately, he was not here, which made dealing with this annoying blob her problem. She stared at it from top to bottom. For the first time in many years, Adelia had no strategy to defeat the monstrosity before her. Silence fell over them. For a few moments, Adelia was on the ground, taking deep breaths. The blob did not move an inch away from the chest. Suddenly, Adelia had a crazy idea in her mind. This should better work. Adelia picked herself up. She sheathed her katana and cracked her neck. Finally, Adelia dashed at the blob once again. On her way to the blob, she raised her hand as a stream of energy shot out of her hand. The energy beam went straight through the blob. As a result, a hole was formed in its center. Adelia immediately increased her speed. Before the hold could close, Adelia leaped into the blob. For the first time, the blob let out a growl. The hole closed up with Adelia inside. The blob grew in size as it frantically moved around the hall. Soon, a bright light emerged within the blob. The temperature in the room slowly rose to the point the blob started to melt down. Adelia roasted the blob from the inside. It rolled and leaped into the air, trying to save itself. However, nothing worked in its favor. The blob slowly melted into a red ooze. It formed a puddle that resembled blood on the ground. The air around the blob reeked of putrid stench. It stank to the point one would die of suffocation. Fortunately, Adelia was inside the blob. The growling noise that came from the blob gradually sounded louder. Eventually, the blob exploded into pieces. Adelia fell down to the ground with a thud. She was completely covered in red goo from head to toe. In her hands, a golden key glimmered. The key put a smile on her face. With the fifth and the last key in her hand, she was one step closer to seeing what was inside the chest. She got up to her feet and walked toward the chest. Wasting no time, she put the key in the hole. As soon as she put the key in, she heard a clicking noise. A dark smoke slowly rose from the chest. The chest slowly opened, revealing an ancient piece of armor, just like the Dark Lord said. She couldn't help smiling and sighing in relief. Finally, she picked up the armor from the chest. But to her surprise, a bolt of lightning hit her out of nowhere. She was sent flying away from the chest. It took her a second to realize what had just happened. She hit the wall before falling down. She felt a sharp pain in her chest. Luckily, the lightning bolt did not penetrate her. When she looked up at the chest, gritting her teeth, she noticed a ghostly figure rising from the chest. The figure slowly took the shape of the Dark Lord himself. "Dark Lord," Adelia immediately knelt down to pay her respect to the Dark Lord. The aura around him terrified Adelia. His eyes glimmered with amusement. He calmly looked at Adelia. Suddenly, a dark beam shot out of his eyes. The dark beams fell on Adelia. E dash E E. Bring this chest to your Dark Lord, the Dark Lord said in a powerful voice. Adelia shuddered, hearing his voice, but she managed to nod her head. Yes, Dark Lord, said Adelia. Adelia lifted her head to look at the Dark Lord. He smiled at her, but she saw a glimpse of pain and sadness within his eyes. She wanted to question the Dark Lord, but the ghostly figure of the Dark Lord faded away in front of her. She had no time to say anything to him. After he disappeared, Adelia could only take the chest. She reached the chest and picked it up. This time, nothing happened except she felt the space around her benign distorted. The sun was on the horizon in Ysirius, where the glistening ocean met the orange sky. Its rays spread in all directions like the open arms of a mother. The reds and oranges spread by the final glow of the flame formed a staircase on the surface of the sea around the island. As time passed, the warm rays of the sun grew colder. Eventually, the rays became non-existent, making way for the stars to peek through in the dark blue sky. The aqua auction ended when the darkness completely conquered the kingdom. People exited the aqua palace in a neat line like ants. The island was bustled with people as many ascended to the sky to leave the island. The VIPs were the first ones to leave. Among those VIPs, one of them had the Dark Lord's armor piece. Saber waited until the group disappeared into the clouds before following them behind. Saber kept his distance from the group. They were not some run-of-the-mill cultivators. Instead, the one who bought the armor piece was one of the war gods of Gondolin. Attacking them was equal to waging war against the Empress herself. The Dark Lord himself said that the Empress might be the only one who could face him and survive if they fought. The war god led his party from the front. He was at the fusion stage while the people accompanying him were at the soul refining stage. They weren't his guards but rather his underlings. Saber was extra careful not to get spotted in the airspace of the Aqua Palace. Saber planned to strike when the group left the island and entered the sky above a thick forest. Every war god had immense pride and ego that could be used against them. If Saber attacked them and ran into the woods below them, the war god would follow Saber behind without a doubt. At that time, Saber could use the darkness and the woods to take out the group one by one. With a rough plan in his head, Saber kept following the group. He used the clouds as a cover to hide. How many of them are there? Saber heard Gaia. I count 7, said Saber. Try not to kill them. We don't want to make enemies with the Empress yet. But if you had to, kill them all, and don't leave anything behind that could be used to track us down, said Gaia. It will be done, Dark Queen. Saber felt confident taking down all of them if push came to shove. However, he would try not to kill them because of her order. As he was following the group, they suddenly stopped. How long are you planning to follow us? Saber heard a calm yet dominant voice. Chapter 786. War God Bellinor. Saber was surprised that the war god had noticed him. As a vampire, he was great at trailing people in the dark. But the war god found him somehow. Saber did not panic. The Dark Lord always said that in the moment of crisis, panic does nothing. Saber recalled those words. He stopped flying as the war god's party slowly turned around. The leader of this group was the war god of Gondolin. No one knew how many war gods the Empress had, but the people thought there were 7. The one Saber followed was one of them. When Michael attended the auction a year ago, he met another war god. Despite their numbers, each of them was extremely powerful. They did not choose to call themselves war gods. Instead, the people called them that, and with time, the name kinda stuck with them. Who you are does not matter to me. Leave and you may live, said the war god. His flaming red hair fluttered in the wind. Those eyes of his burned so bright with vigor and power that Saber almost thought someone lit a flame inside them. However, he wore rather ordinary-looking robes like lesser nobles. One would expect the war god to wear some fancy armor and carry a powerful weapon with him. On the contrary, this war god had an aura of simplicity around him. Saber noticed their pointy ears twitching for some reason. Unlike the war god, the other elves burned with rage. They gritted their teeth as they were on the verge of attacking Saber for following them. The elves did not like being followed, especially by a human. The war god, however, gave Saber an option to leave. Not that the war god could be defined as merciful, but he felt it was beneath him to attack a body-strengthening cultivator. Only if Saber's showed his true cultivation level and form, they wouldn't think twice before attacking him. Hearing the war god's warning, Saber remained calm. The forest he planned to initiate his attack was just a mile away from them. Once he had entered the forest, he could take down the elves one by one. Considering the Dark Queen ordered him to try to knock them out instead of killing them, Saber had to strategize a bit. Killing them was easy, maybe except for the war god, but the other elves would stand no chance against Saber. The Dark Lord's potions not only took away a vampire's weakness to sunlight but also enhanced their abilities such as speed, momentum, and power of their attacks. Especially the potion he and Adelia took was several times more potent than the rest. With Saber's battle experience and enhanced abilities, he could match the war god's fusion stage level 9 cultivation. But first, Saber needed to get into the forest. "I will if you hand over your space rings. This is a robbery, my friends." The war god looked amused, while the other elves looked a bit confused. They thought Saber was crazy. The elves weren't wrong to think so. Anyone who dared to rob the Gondolin elves was nothing but crazy. Even if this party did not belong to the war god and a commoner was in the war god's place, the Empress' wrath would be the same. Trying to rob a Gondolian was a crime punishable by a long and painful death in Gondolin. Saber knew that, yet he couldn't care less. The Dark Queen scared him more than the Empress ever could. In fact, the Dark Queen scared almost everyone in the army more than the Dark Lord himself. Sometimes, he would understand and be merciful if one of his subordinates fucked up something. Mercy would go out the window if the matter was handled by the Dark Queen. 7 months ago, Saber noticed the Dark Queen literally axed someone to death because he dared to speak about the order in public for fame. She didn't even allow anyone to bury the pieces. It took the crows a week to clean the flesh off his bones. After that display of cruelty, no one dared to speak about the order ever again. He doubted the Empress could ever be some close to the Dark Queen in terrifying people. Saber had no idea how wrong he was. There was a dark side to the Empress that no one had ever seen or lived to tell tales about. Killing the war god would be a good way to see this dark side. Luckily, it was not Saber's intention to kill them, at least he would try not to. "How do you plan to accomplish that feat with your cultivation level?" asked the war god. If Michael was here, he would recognize the thick British accent and be surprised by it. In fact, all the elves in Gondolin talked in an accent that resembled a British accent. "Ask nicely, perhaps," Saber chuckled. "Let's kill him." "Yeah. Why are we wasting time on this weasel? Human scum." The elves began to raise their voices. They might not be as racist as the elves of Nelnather, but still, they were racist enough to flay Saber alive for looking them in the eyes. Almost all the elves had a superiority complex. They treated every other race with scorn and distance, even their racial cousins, the Dark Elves. They had no idea Saber neither cared nor that he was a human. "Cultivation is not the only way to gauge someone's power," said Saber. These were not his words but the Dark Lord's. "So you want back off?" The war god slightly tilted his head. A golden radiant appeared around the war god. His eyes glimmered with killing intent. Just this aura was enough to kill a typical body-strengthening stage cultivator. The war god knew this. Hence he was a bit surprised that Saber remained alive instead of puking blood and falling down. Sar calmly stood atop his flying sword and stared at the elves. "Am I supposed to be scared? Now you know I am not a run-of-the-mill thief," Saber calmly said. His voice oozed with arrogance and pride of being the Dark Lord's subordinate. At first, Saber felt forced and embarrassed to serve someone else other than himself. But after a year, he felt nothing but pride. The Dark Lord was the most feared and powerful man in the world. He was lucky to serve him and support the Dark Lord in his path to eradicate the Great Eight clans as well as the Skyhall. "You're just stupid with a little trick up his sleeve," the war god said. He was nonchalant. Unless this thief was a half-immortal, the war god had no problem killing him. "End him," said the war god. He didn't bother to attack Saber himself. Instead, he let one of his minions deal with Saber. The elf cracked his knuckles before hovering toward Saber. Since he was at the soul refining stage, he thought he could take on Saber. Saber remained calm as still water. When the elf approached, he grabbed Saber by his neck. Saber slowly squirmed, turning his back toward the forest. The elf clenched his fist. Almost everyone in the world knew about the elves and their arrogance. They liked to toy with their foes before killing them, especially the weak ones. Since Saber pretended to be a body-strengthening stage, the elf smiled with amusement. He balled his fist and punched Saber in the chest. Upon the elf's fist hitting Saber's chest, a booming sound resonated. Saber was sent flying. The elf watched Saber flying toward the forest. Saber took advantage of the situation by intentionally flying into the forest. He crashed through the canopy, breaking several branches. He dash he he. The war god's gaze turned cold. "Finish what you've started," the war god said with a murderous tone. Just his voice alone was enough to make the elves tremble. "I will return with his head," said the elf who punched Saber. The elf immediately flew into the forest, following Saber's trail. After the elf disappeared into the foliage, the war god turned his gaze toward the other elves. "Go on. Help him. Come with his head or don't come at all." The war god grinned like a devil. The elves dared not to linger any second longer. Compared to the other war gods, Bellinor was the kindest. Otherwise, he wouldn't have given the thief an option to escape. Any other war gods would have torn him to pieces the moment they found out he was following them. But even Bellinor had his limits. After sending the elves to hunt down Saber, Bellinor hovered above the forest. For some reason, Bellinor felt something amiss. The thief did not seem like an ordinary thief. Something was definitely strange about him. An ordinary thief wouldn't have dared to mess with a war god. The forest the elves entered was oak-brown and primitive. The grasses they stepped on were crackly beneath their feet because of the recent dry spell. One would be in awe of the size and majesty of the trees, but not these elves. They were not here to enjoy the beauty but to kill a human. The trees' knotted arms rose ever upwards, as far as one's head could lift. They were hoary fortresses and stood proudly. The orchestra of birdsong suddenly stopped as the elves entered. A pair of jays were screeching high up in the canopy of the trees. These scavengers of the bird world sensed the murderous aura around the elves. Their eyes gleamed with delight as they hoped they could eat fresh meat soon. "Spread out. He must be here somewhere. One of you stay in the air and make sure he doesn't fly away." An elf barked orders at the others. "When did you become the boss of us?" asked another elf scornfully. "Why don't we go to Bellinor and ask him?" "Fuck you." The elves scattered through the forest quickly after hearing Bellinor's name instead of bitching. The elves spread their focus around them to find Saber. Little did they know Saber was watching them and waiting for them to spread out. The elves thought they were hunting Saber, but it was the other way around. With darkness and forest to his advantage, Saber had the battle in hand. Chapter 787. Taking out one by one inside the forest, Saber watched the elves from a safe distance. He could feel their senses. Whenever he felt their senses getting close to him, he leaped away from one branch to another. As though nature wanted to add some twist to their situation, dark clouds soon gathered in the sky above the forest. Saber heard the thunder rumbling. The wetness in the air suddenly increased. warning Saber about the upcoming heavy downpour. Everything under the thick canopy rustled. He heard the elves growl. They hated getting their hands dirty. These elves were natured in palaces and mansions. Thus, they hated everything related to dirt. The elves hovered above the ground to avoid stepping on the mud. Saber could pinpoint each and every elf in the forest. They were searching for him alone, which was a big mistake. Watching a lone elf, Saber silently broke a twig. He aimed at the ground a few meters away from the elf and threw it to distract him. The sudden noise startled the elf. As Saber expected, the elf moved toward where he heard the sound. Because the elves thought Saber was just a body-strengthening stage cultivator, the elves did not put a defense shield around him. Their pride and arrogance prevented them from doing so. Saber utilized this situation. He slowly flew toward the elf without making a sound. The elf's neck hair stood up as he sensed someone approaching him. But before he could react, Saber grabbed the elf from behind. He squeezed the elf's neck until his skin turned purplish. The elf's body gradually stopped twitching as he lost consciousness. Saber did not waste any second. He immediately jumped into the top of a tree. Saber took out some ropes and tied the elf against the tree. Saber could have easily taken the elf's life but chose not to. Leaving the elf behind, Saber moved toward his next target. After leaping from tree to tree for a few moments, Saber reached his target. The elf had a deep frown on his face. He did not like to be in the forest at all. Unfortunately for the elf, the sky broke open, pouring water in full force. The big rain droplets rushed through the canopy with an unearthly sound. "Fuck you, rain!" The elf cursed the rain. Streaks of lightning decorated the dark sky. Soon, Saber heard an ear-piercing thunder. Saber immediately dashed at the elf to take him out. The elf did not expect someone to jump from above. Before he could react, Saber landed straight on the elf's shoulder. The sheer force of Saber's landing dislocated the elf's shoulder and knocked him out cold. Just like earlier, Saber grabbed the elf, leaped onto the tree, and tied him with ropes. Saber expected the war god to intervene any second. Yet to his surprise, the war god just hovered in the sky, getting drenched in the rain. Saber had a strange feeling that the war god was watching him. But if he did, Saber wondered why he wasn't attacking him. It was strange behavior for a war god. For now, Saber ignored this feeling and continued to hunt down the elves. The heavy downpour came with howling wind. Soon, all the trees in the forest started to sway in a single direction. Some trees looked like they were about to get uprooted from the ground. Luckily for Saber, the rain and thunderclaps covered any sound Saber or an elf made. Saber quickly flew to the third elf while keeping an eye on the fourth and final elf. As Saber moved closer, he noticed a faint glow around the elf. The rain droplets vaporized upon hitting the glow around the elf. Hence, the elf remained dry and cozy. But the elf's coziness was short-lived as Saber leaped onto him, breaking the shield with a single punch. The shield exploded at the same time when a thunderclap resonated through the forest. The thunderclap masked the sound of the shield exploding and the elf growling. Saber did a quick work hiding the unconscious elf just like before. Finally, only one elf remained. Saber wanted something special for the elf because he was the one who punched Saber earlier. As a proud elder vampire and a subordinate of the Dark Lord, it was only natural that Saber would pay back his debt in multiple folds. He was almost tempted to kill the elf. Thinking about what to do with the elf, Saber flew through the forest like a rustling wind. The elf in the air was in direct eye contact with the war god. Hence, attacking him would be equal to attacking the war god himself. Dash E. As the elf was told, he was searching for Saber. Saber intentionally left his flying sword behind when he crashed into the forest earlier. It was to confuse and make the elves look for him on the ground. Since a body-strengthening stage cultivator could not fly, they didn't bother to look above. Plus, Saber left some blood on the ground for the elves to follow. The elf was following the trail of blood to track down Saber. Little did he know Saber was watching him from behind. The elf was too focused on the train and failed to notice anything around him. "Did you see him flying away?" Suddenly, the elf shouted as the birds resting in the forest scattered away. The elf didn't bother to lower his voice. Even though they weren't in Gondolin, they acted otherwise. For them, all of Ar belonged to them, the superior race of all. They could conquer all Ar if they wished to because Gondolin had the mightiest army in the world. However, even the dwarves couldn't match the elven might. The dwarves could indeed build hundreds of new contraptions but could never compete with elven rune magic. Moreover, the dwarves were blessed with an innate talent to build but not the talent for cultivation. Hence, they lacked powerful warriors like the war gods of Gondolin. Of course, some dwarves were an exception to the rule. But they were rare and not enough to defeat the elven kingdoms. "No, he is still in there," the elf in the air replied with the same volume. War god Bellinor watched the scene with an amused smile. These elves were just there with him to entertain. He felt bored traveling alone to the aqua auction. So although Bellinor cared for them, they weren't his friends. Otherwise, he would be in the forest with them, not watching them getting their asses kicked. "I am getting closer to him," the elf in the forest shouted. Judging by the blood on the ground, the elf assumed the thief had crawled somewhere and died. Saber slowly moved toward the elf without making a sound. At that moment, he was just a few meters away from the elf's senses. Saber was careful not to alert the elf. It was no fun that way. Eventually, the elf reached the blood trail's end. To the elf's surprise, he didn't find a body as he hit a dead end. The elf looked around. He creased his brows. "What the hell?" The elf was confused. The blood trail disappeared suddenly. As he was looking around, he heard a cracking sound a few meters away from the blood trail. His elven ears twitched as he followed the sound. It was Saber who broke a couple of twigs with stones. Saber waited for the elf to move away from the blood trail. When the elf reached the place where he saw nothing but some tall and thick bushes under a giant tree, he felt a chill. His senses detected a life sign near him. The elf immediately reached for his weapon. "Hello?" Saber landed right before him and grabbed his arm. Saber did not knock him out with one punch, although he could do it easily. Instead, Saber punched the elf just like he did. Yet the elf didn't go flying because Saber held his arm. The elf groaned, but the sizzling sound of heavy rain hitting the canopy masked the elf's sound. Saber hit him once again in the face, breaking the elf's nose with a sickening crunch. Blood oozed out of the elf's nose. The elf's consciousness slowly slipped off. Despite his soul-refining cultivation, he couldn't withstand a powerful fusion-stage vampire's punch filled with rage. He was lucky Saber was ordered not to kill them. The smell of blood tempted Saber to sink his teeth into the elf's neck. Even though the Dark Lord's cure for the vampires cured their lust for blood, it didn't take away their temptation. In other words, a vampire had no need to drink blood, but they could if they wished to. The Dark Lord didn't order them to stop drinking blood because it would be like asking a human to stop drinking water. But he couldn't let the vampires wreak havoc within kingdoms. Hence, Michael let them give up to their temptation if they found an evil foe. To put it differently, they were ordered not to harm any innocent. Until now, no vampire under the Dark Lord had ever hurt an innocent for blood. They only imagined what would happen if they did. Judging by the look on the elf's face, Saber realized one more punch might kill him. Because of that, Saber had to stop hitting them, though he would like to punch the elf more. Since he was the last elf in the forest, Saber didn't bother to hide him. He just left him on the ground and leaped onto a branch. "Come out and deal with him too." Suddenly, Saber heard Bellinor's voice. It sounded louder than a thunderclap. Saber wasn't surprised as he felt the war god was watching him. A mere forest wouldn't be able to prevent a war god from seeing what was happening to his men. Saber's eyes glistened with excitement. After a long, long time, he was going to battle a worthy opponent. The elf in the air frowned. Unlike Bellinor, he had no idea what had transpired within the forest. He was completely stunned when he saw the lowly thief flying through the canopy without a flying sword. Furthermore, he wasn't harmed at all. The elf couldn't help thinking the worst. He trembled slightly in fear. "We should do this alone," said Bellinor. To Saber's surprise, he just flicked his wrist as a blast of wind knocked out the elf in a blink of an eye. It was a show of power. Honestly, it really surprised Saber. He knocked out a soul refiner with a flick of his wrist. "Shall we begin?" Bellinor asked after knocking out the elf. Both had no fear in their eyes but glimmering excitement. Chapter 788. Stalemate. Battle. Saber cracked his fist, preparing himself to battle the war god. The war god remained calm. He wanted Saber to make his first move. Just as he expected, Saber did make his first move. He dashed at the war god with speed beyond any fusion stage cultivators. The cosmic energy, coupled with the Dark Lord's potion, enhanced his speed to the point the war god himself was surprised by his speed. Saber even left some afterimages on his trail. Although Bellinor was surprised by his speed, it was not enough to catch him off guard. The war god simply snapped his finger as a golden crescent wave blasted off Saber. As Saber was flying in the air backward, a small glimmer of light enveloped Saber's body. Each war god had their own unique way of fighting and armor. Only a few had seen a war god's battle armor and lived to tell tales about it. Luckily, Saber received a rare opportunity to see the armor. It was a set of armor with a squared helm and a squared, T-shaped opening, leaving the eyes, nose, and mouth exposed. Attached to the top was a sun-shaped metal ornament piece. The shoulders were oval, quite short, and small in size. They were decorated with a row of metal feathers, all pointing upwards. The row reached from side to side. The upper arms were protected by squared, half-covering rear braces, which sat well under the shoulder plates, while the lower arms were covered by vambraces which had many small metal spikes covering the vambraces all over. The real beauty of the armor was its chest plate. It was made from a couple of metal layers, mimicking dragon scales. It covered everything from the neck down and ended at the groin. Following the upper body, the armor slowly covered his lower body. The upper legs were covered by squared, fully covering cuisses as greaves protected the lower legs with several arrowheads attached on the outer sides as if arrows had pierced the legs. Bellinor glowed like a sun in the night sky. He cracked his neck as Saber finally steadied himself. "That's nice armor," Saber commented about Bellinor's armor. "Enjoy the sight while you still can," said Bellinor. The armor glimmered brighter and brighter to the point Saber's eyes had to adjust for its light. The war god wasted no time as he dashed at Saber. He was almost as fast as Saber or even faster. Saber instinctively cast a spell. In a blink of an eye, a torrent made of blood appeared around Saber. The blood shield protected Saber from the war god's punch. Bellinor punched the blood shield with enough force to send Saber flying. Blood splashed across the sky, but this time Saber didn't go flying as before. Instead, he steadied himself quickly and dashed at the war god faster than before. This time, Saber punched the war god right in the chest. The war god raised his arms to protect himself. His hands went numb when he blocked Saber's punch. The sheer force pushed back Bellinor. Saber did not stop as he punched the war god again and again. Their battle produced thunderous explosions that echoed through the night sky. Countless trees got uprooted by their battle. The aftershock decimated the forest below them. For them, they were just punching each other. But in reality, they were two powerful fusion stage warriors. The energy produced by their battle was enough to cause more damage than a natural disaster. They didn't give a damn about the environment. Instead, they fought like beasts. Saber raised his hand as a vulture made of blood materialized above them. It was gigantic. Compared to the blood vulture, Saber and Bellinor looked small. The bird cast a large shadow in the clouds when lightning flashed across the sky. As soon as the blood vulture appeared in the sky, the air started to reek of blood. It glared at Bellinor with its hollow eyes. The blood vulture tried to peck Bellinor with its long, gigantic beak. Bellinor clapped his hands together as a powerful shock wave shot out of his hands. As though it was a living bird, the blood vulture screeched. Blood scattered in all directions as the vulture faded away from existence. However, before it completely disappeared from sight, it managed to scratch Bellinar. E dash E E. An ear-piercing screech resonated from the armor. Fortunately for Bellinar, the armor saved his skin. Except for a small chunk of armor, he lost nothing. Saber didn't wait for the war god to retaliate. Instead, he pressed his attack. Saber's fist glowed in crimson red. Every punch Saber threw had enough force to scatter a boulder to pieces. Bellinar's armor glowed brighter and brighter until it exploded, creating a powerful shock wave. Saber went flying as the armor lost its glow. Bellinar raised his hand as a golden fist appeared behind Saber. Sensing a threat, Saber immediately cast the blood shield again. Upon the fist striking the shield, it created a thunderous explosion. The shield and fist exploded at the same time, creating a mist of red and gold. Both of them completely ignored the mist and dashed at each other once again. Their eyes glimmered with battle lust. In mid-sky, they went all in. Neither of them held back. No one under the fusion stage could see their moves, but only a blur. A few moments later, they stopped attacking each other. When they stopped, each had blood flowing down from the corner of their mouths. Bellinar wiped off the blood from his mouth and smiled, looking at his own blood. "It had been a long time since I've seen my blood," said Bellinar. He was not gloating but telling the truth. The war gods usually lived a peaceful life since no one had dared to attack Gondolin or an elven nation for the past 10 years. So Bellinar was excited to fight a worthy foe after such a long time. Moreover, the one whom the elves thought was weakling, pathetic human scum had actually made Bellinar bleed. "There is more where that came from," Saber snickered. "Is that so?" Bellinar tilted his head before taking a deep breath. His skin glowed as all cuts and bruises healed up automatically. Saber and Belnor readied for the second round. In a blink of an eye, they flew toward each other. To Saber's surprise, an ethereal lion head materialized behind Bellinar. It was just as big as the blood vulture cast by Saber. The head roared as ripples appeared in the sky. All the storm clouds faded out of existence because of the roar. As a result, the heavy rain stopped. Saber's ears rang. Even his vision turned blurry for a moment. The trees that escaped their previous attack got completely decimated by the roar. Below them, there was a large crater filled with broken trees. But they couldn't care less. On the contrary, they focused on the battle. Their minds and eyes were filled with battle lust. It had been a long time since they both fought a worthy opponent. Usually, they would kill their foe within a minute or minute top. But this battle went on for almost 5 minutes without a victor. They both fought on equal terms, and Bellinar wanted to change that. The lion finally stopped roaring. Felt like a storm had passed them. Without the heavy rain, silence returned to the area. Saber closed his eyes for a second as the blood vulture appeared in the sky again. The vulture locked its gaze on the lion. On the other hand, the lion growled at the vulture as though they were both alive and had emotions. Soon, they lunged at each other, just as Bellinar and Saber did. Their battle intensified. The vulture and lion head tried to bite each other. While they were battling it out, Saber and Bellinar exchanged blows. They dived down, attacking each other. In the moment of heat, they forgot there was a crate down. They hit the ground with enough force to form a mini crater within the large crater. The force split them apart as they crashed in opposite directions. Their clothes became completely drenched with mud. They immediately jumped back to their feet to go all out again. Unlike before, they didn't dash at each other, at least Bellinar didn't. He stayed still and punched the ground below. Several cracks formed in the ground and spread throughout like spider webs. Saber leaped into the air to avoid being knocked down. He wondered what Bellinar was trying to accomplish. But he soon got his answer when he picked up a large boulder and threw it at him. The boulder was easily twice the size of an elephant. Yet Bellinor threw it like it was nothing. Saber didn't fly away but punched the boulder with his bare hand. The boulder exploded. But before the debris could hit the ground, Bellinor shot through the debris, hitting Saber in the face at speed beyond Saber's expectation. The war god's punch and speed put a smile on Saber's face. He realized the war god was unleashing his full potential. His entire body glowed like a mini-sun. The heat radiating from Bellinor's body turned the debris into ashes. Saber quickly covered himself with a blood shield to protect himself from burning. Saber fought back with blood punches. Bellinor glowed in golden radiance while Saber radiated a crimson-red light due to the blood shield around him. As they were fighting, a golden light materialized in Bellinor's hand. It was a golden spear with a red cloth wrapped around its top. Bellinor stabbed Saber at lightning speed. The blade cut his rib cage, barely missing Saber's heart. "Cheeky bastard," Saber snickered. He didn't expect Bellinor to take out his weapon suddenly. Now that Bellinor had taken out his weapon, Saber conjured his blood sword. The sword produced an evil aura with red smoke. Both these weapons belonged to the legendary class. Hence, they created an aftershock upon clashing. They fought on the same level. As much as they liked to gain an advantage over another, they simply couldn't. Unknown to them, the Dark Queen watched the battle from a distance. She trusted Saber, but she also couldn't afford to lose the armor piece. Chapter 789. Dark Queen's interference. Saber's blood sword and Bellinor's golden spear clashed, creating otherworldly noises. Instead of using spells, they used their weapons to fight. However, they occasionally cast spells to gain an advantage. Yet, their battle remained at a stalemate. The battle between them continued for almost a day. When the sun rose in the horizon, Bellinor's aggressiveness increased by several folds. Bellinor's armor absorbed the sunlight to enhance his speed. Since Saber had no armor, he began to take blows from Bellinor. The war god swung and stabbed left and right. The spear cut Saber a couple of times. His silver robes began to drench in blood. Not that Saber was slow, but Bellinor was faster. Bellinor's armor glowed brighter and brighter in the light. Blood trickled down from Saber's mouth. The war god hit him with the spear in the face. It contained enough force to turn a core-strengthening stage warrior's neck to the other side. Saber's face went numb. Bellinor pushed his advantage by hitting him several times, faster than before. Bellinor quickly moved to the point he showed his back to the rising sun. As a result, Saber faced the sun. The bright sunlight messed with Saber's eyesight. He couldn't see the golden spear in the golden light. Seeing Saber squinting his eyes, Bellinor snickered. As a war god, he was born and raised on a battlefield. He knew how to use everything around him to his advantage. While he was battling Saber, he learned Saber's strength. He knew Saber was not weaker than him. Thus, he fought till the sun rose to increase his power. His weight was worth it as he started to hit Saber more and more. But to Bellinor's surprise, cuts and bruises on Saber's body healed instantly. Bellinor had an eerie doubt about Saber from the moment he met him. "You're a vampire," Bellinor said. He didn't stop attacking Saber. On the contrary, he turned more ruthless and aggressive. Saber slowly started to lose the battle. Luckily, Saber's reflex and battle experience enabled him to evade deadly blows. Bellinor kept aiming for Saber's heart and throat after realizing he was a vampire. "So Ghost sent you here?" Bellinor asked as Saber flew backward to put some distance between the two of them. When Saber heard Bellinor address the Dark Lord by his name, Saber's blood boiled. He gritted his teeth, swinging his blood sword. "Do not speak his name," Saber snarled. "Why?" Bellinor deflected the blood sword with his spear and asked. Bellinor had no sign of fear in his eyes. Compared to the rest of the continents, Ar had seen only a little of what the Dark Lord could do. Therefore, people like the war gods feared the Dark Lord less. Some of them outright challenged the Dark Lord for a duel in several parts of Elven kingdoms. Of course, the Dark Lord ignored these silly challenges because he had more important things to deal with. Besides, the Skyhall and Guardian would have an easier time if he answered all these challenges from nobodies. "Because you will die," Saber growled. He saw a glimpse of the Dark Queen on the horizon. He could swear he saw her. Bellinor didn't even flinch hearing Saber's threat. Little did he know that it was not a threat but a warning. The runes in Bellinor's armor radiated bright light. He glowed under the sunlight. Saber received more blows as seconds passed, and his face became pale. Every part in his body ached. The armor of Bellinor made him stronger than Saber initially expected. Spare's mind and body told him to use the teleportation scroll to escape. Backing off and living to fight another day was way better than dying. However, he couldn't afford to escape without the Dark Lord's armor piece. That was the only reason why Saber was still fighting Bellinor. If he managed to escape with the armor piece somehow, Saber planned to ask the Dark Lord for armor. He learned the importance of powerful armor the hard way. Now that Michael had reached the 5-star blacksmith level, he could forge powerful armor. But to forge armor like Bellinor's, he needed to be a 6-star blacksmith. Michael didn't plan to stay at a 5-star level for a long time as he did with the alchemy specialization. Instead, Michael decided to get everything the system required to reach the 6-star level as soon as he left the heavenly tribulation. Unlike Saber, Michael knew how powerful armor could change the tide of a battle. He also knew his army needed armor more than him. All the great 8 clans possessed powerful armor and weapons, making them almost invincible. When he was done fitting his army with weapons and armor forged by him, the hierarchy of the power structure in this world would change forever. Eventually, Saber's body refused to listen to him as his muscles went rigid. His movements slowed down, leaving him vulnerable to a deadly killing blow. The war god raised his spear to end this battle once and for all. As much as he hated vampires, he respected Saber as an opponent. He was taught that a warrior must never fear an enemy but always respect them. When he was about to stab Saber's heart with his golden spear, a dark trail appeared in the air. The trail of blackness hit Bellinor in the chest before he could stab Saber. Bellinor coughed up blood. It took him a second for his brain to process everything. His chest ached as he looked down to see a dark arrow sticking out of his chest. He tried to turn around, but another arrow hit Bellinor in the gut. Using this opportunity, Saber mustered all his strength and pulled out the space ring from Bellinor's hand. Green veins bulged up under Bellinor's skin. Bellinor's vision blurred. Before he could retaliate, Saber tore the teleportation scroll in half. A bright light enveloped Saber. To Saber's surprise, Bellinor stabbed the light as he saw a splash of blood in the light. Bellinor quickly turned around despite the poison in his body to see who shot him with poison arrows. When he turned around, he saw no one in the vicinity. He immediately accessed his space ring to get a healing potion. The poison was powerful enough to harm a fusion stage cultivator himself. But he was surprised when his vision cleared. He felt better as his breathing became normal. The green veins on his skin slowly faded away. The poison cured itself without taking an antidote. Bellinor realized that whoever shot the arrows had no intention of killing him. Even when he was fighting Saber, he sensed Saber was holding back. He didn't go for killing blows. It became clear to him that Saber wanted to steal his space ring that contained the armor piece. "I should have been more careful," Bellinor said to himself. It was too late for him to realize that the armor piece might have belonged to the Dark Lord. At least he had taken an interest in the armor. He knew he must inform the Empress. Attacking a war god was equal to attacking Gondolin itself. Hence, the Dark Lord had waged a war against Gondolin. Inside the Gondolin castle, an elven lady with striking golden hair flew around her perfectly sculpted face. Sparkling aquamarine eyes sat gracefully within their sockets, watching delightfully over the haven they'd sought solace in for so long. She radiated power and grace. Anyone would be tempted to bow and kneel down before her. She was none other than Nithroel Grimfield, the Empress of Ar. E dash E E. Something was appealing about her. Perhaps it was her personality, or perhaps it was simply her goodwill. But nonetheless, people tend to respect her. She stood atop the balcony outside her room and watched the city of Mvarian. Her mind was filled with new requests from the people. Recently, the dwarves had begun to build new types of contraptions, which made them worry about the kingdom's security. The dwarves had been keeping their hatred toward the elves suppressed. She worried they might side with the Dark Lord to seek revenge against them. Thousands of years ago, elves and dwarves ruled over the kingdom. Then, the dwarves cultivated almost as fast as the elves. These two races were always on the verge of the fighting because of their hatred toward each other. With their superior contraptions, the dwarves finally attacked Gondolin. They would have won the war if it wasn't for her. The dwarves knew she was powerful but never expected to be powerful enough to wipe out their strongest armies within a few minutes. Because of what the dwarves did, she summoned all the best rune masters, healers, and alchemists to suppress the dwarves' cultivation. The dwarves slowly declined as the elves became the lone sovereign of Ar. Even to this date, the dwarves held fire in their hearts that longed to burn the elven empire to the ground. As Nithroel was thinking about the dwarves, she saw Belinor flying toward her in the sky. Even from miles away, Nithroel could see the frowns on the elves' faces behind Belinor. She patiently waited for Belinor to come to her. A while later, Belinor was granted permission to land on her balcony. The moment his feet touched the ground, Belinor dropped to his knees. "Your Imperial Majesty," Belinor lowered his head. "Rise, Belinor. Your eyes contain anger and concern. Tell me what happened in the auction." Her voice sounded gentle, like a melody. Belinor took a deep breath before telling everything that had transpired. She remained as calm as still water. When he finished his story, she just smiled. "So the time to meet him has arrived," said Nithroel. "Do you think the vampire who attacked you could have killed your underlings?" asked Nithroel. She had no signs of anger in her eyes. Instead, she seemed amused. "Yes, your Imperial Majesty," Belinor nodded without a doubt. He watched how the vampire had taken out the elves. Thus, he knew the vampire could have killed the elves if he wished to. Something prevented him from killing them. Even when he was fighting him, the vampire held back. "I wish to meet the Dark Lord." Belinor was startled by her words. Before he could raise his concern, she simply raised her hand. "You are coming with me and only you. This is my order, not a request." Chapter 790. End of Heavenly Tribulation. A few days later, everyone in the dark ocean surrounded the floating mountain. The entire mountain field was littered with lightning bolts. The lightning bolts targeted the top of the waterfall. Thousands of lightning streaks were in the sky. It was a beautiful yet terrifying sight. The lightning made the night look like a day with its continuous bright flashes. Other than the visible changes, the energy around the mountain violently fluctuated. Everyone in the area felt difficult to breathe. They felt weak for some reason. On top of the Sword-Hilt Mountain, a cloud of darkness surrounded Michael. Runes and arrays around him lit like Christmas decorations. He sat in a meditative position with his eyes closed. Gaia and Adelia stood a few meters away from Michael in case someone tried to attack him. Fortunately, they faced no enemies for the last 9 days. The rogue cultivators didn't even dare to watch the heavenly tribulations. The last time Michael had his heavenly tribulations, countless cultivators came from all over the world to watch him. But now, the floating mountain had only the Dark Army. At that moment, the dark ocean became one of the most protected places in the world. Gaia looked around, the lightning storm getting worse by the second. The howling wind warned them about the upcoming storm. Gaia knew if he hadn't revealed himself as the Dark Lord, someone might have tried to interrupt the tribulations. Now, no one had the guts to do so. What happened to Ithalin was a perfect example to show them what would be the result of messing with the Dark Lord. The Dark Army was ordered to patrol the mountain vigilantly. They patrolled every corner of the mountain. In addition to the army, all of Michael's subordinates except Sadie had arrived at the castle. They didn't come outside to show their faces but remained in the castle. Gaia ordered them to come outside only if powerful armies attacked them. As they were watching the tribulation, the sky directly above Michael darkened. Granted that the storm clouds were already dark, but they became pitch black. Gaia could barely see Michael through the dark cloud of smoke around him. This darkness was not midnight dark. Instead, the darkness around him seemed otherworldly. The darkness made everyone weaker. Suddenly, a dark lightning bolt struck Michael from above. Gaia's heart skipped in shock. But she remained still instead of rushing forward. She had total trust in Michael. Nightmare and Vidora looked slightly worried. Another lightning bolt struck him, and countless bolts rained down upon him. The ground around him was lit with dark flames. Gaia could feel the scorching heat from the darkness. Soon, seconds became minutes, and minutes turned hours. Gaia noticed Michael's power slowly and steadily growing. The energy fluctuations around him skyrocketed. Congratulations to host for reaching the Immortal Stage Level 1. Congratulations to host Michael for leveling up. The current stage is Immortal Stage Level 2. Congratulations to host Michael for leveling up. The current stage is Immortal Stage Level 3. Congratulations to host Michael for leveling up. The current stage is Immortal Stage Level 4. He's reaching the Immortal Stage, said Adelia. This was the first time Gaia had seen a cultivator reaching the Immortal Stage. She and the army stared at Michael in shock. He reached the Immortal Stage Level 2 in a few minutes after reaching Level 1. He didn't stop at Level 2 but reached Level 3 and 4 in a few minutes. Finally, it stopped at Level 4. Gaia and Adelia thought no one outside was watching the mountain. But they were dead wrong. At that time, two outsiders stayed far away, watching everything that had been happening in the dark ocean. These two were none other than Ethan and Diana. He is getting stronger faster and faster, said Ethan. His voice contained a cocktail of emotions. He was proud, worried, shocked, and terrified. The stronger he becomes, the bigger the target on his back, said Diana. Ethan slowly wiped off the blood from her face. The reason Michael had a peaceful tribulation was because of Diana. Some of the great 8 clans had sent assassins to interrupt the tribulations to kill the Dark Lord. However, they were all slaughtered by Diana before they could reach the Dark Ocean. Even the patrolling Dark Army had no idea a slaughter had taken place around the mountain. "What do we do?" asked Ethan. Naturally, he was worried about his son. It had been more than a year since he saw him. Before he went full Dark Lord mode, Ethan was able to see and talk to him due to alchemy deals. Now they completely lost connection with him. "We can't do anything," Diana sighed. She was at the fusion stage. Soon, her son's enemies would be stronger than her. At that, no matter how fast she could cultivate, she wouldn't be able to defeat them. Moreover, soon she would trigger her heavenly tribulation. She couldn't even imagine what Skyhall would do when they realized she had broken the seal put on her soul. If she wanted, she could have reached the half-immortal stage a month ago. Instead, she was waiting for the right time and right place. Her heavenly tribulations could destroy her entire family. She was even planning on asking the Dark Lord's help. If someone could help her, it might be her son. She didn't want to add more trouble to Noah's plate than he already had. On the other hand, Rowena had been staying in her palace for the last year. They were about to meet Rowena almost after a year at Andrew's and Catherine's baby shower. Diana and Ethan wished to spend the day as a family, but there was no way to invite Ghost. Diana yearned for a family reunion they deserved, although she knew the odds of that happening was near impossible. "I still think we should tell them everything," said Ethan as Diana shook her head. "If we did, they would go to war with the Skyhall itself. Our kids are strong but not strong enough to face the great 8 clans or the Skyhall. I lost count of how many times I told you this." Diana smiled tiredly. To be honest, Diana couldn't find a way to get her family out of this mess. But telling her children about Ghost and the Skyhall was out of the question. She knew about Rowena, Noah, and Sabrina. Rowena would break the palace and wage war against the Skyhall the moment she learned the truth about her little brother. On the other hand, Noah would be broken to the core since he believed in the Guardian Guild and Andreas. The truth would break everything he believed in. As for Ghost, Diana had no idea what he would do when he learned the truth. One day, she just wanted him to forgive her. She would gladly give her life for him to do that. Meanwhile, the lightning bolts continued to strike Ghost, tempering his physical body. Eventually, the lightning storm stopped as the storm slowly lost its force. The dark clouds faded away, leaving a little bit of light to peek through. Michael slowly opened his eyes. They glimmered with vigor and newfound powers. He looked around the endless ocean surrounding the floating mountain. He moved his head left and right. His neck cracked as he stood up. When he clenched his fist, dark golden lightning bolts crackled around his fist. Soon they turned black. These black lightning bolts were several times more powerful than the golden bolts. He felt many changes in his body, but this was neither the right place nor the time. He smiled at Gaia before disappearing from her sight. He left an afterimage that lasted a second before fading away. Surprisingly, he didn't teleport but cast the lightning dash. His speed reached the point it looked like he had teleported away. Michael reached his room in a few blinks of an eye. He felt dizzy as his mind and body were still adjusting to his new speed level. He jumped straight onto his bed and opened his status window. Host. Michael cultivation level. Immortal level 4 experience points. 0/8. 000. 000 badass points. 1. 600. 000 skills and spells. Wind Blast. LVL 6 Ultimate Form Level 1 Eyes of Doom. LVL 5 Ultimate Form Level 1 Responsive Shield. LVL 8 Environment Scanning. LVL 8 Ignitia. LVL 8 Ultimate Form Level 1 Silenes. LVL 1 Lightning Dash. LVL 6 Ultimate Form Level 1 Energy Devolver. LVL 5 Soul Eater. LVL 5 Death Range. LVL 3 Eyes of Darkness. Normal. Can sense the cultivation level of others' Eyes of Darkness. Lucifer. Can sense the cultivation level of others. Can see through illusions cloud of darkness. Lucifer. Weak-willed enemies will lose their courage completely and surrender. Death range will be 50% more powerful. And if activated in darkness, the host's cultivation level will be boosted 4 levels up regardless of the stage barrier. Wordless Spellcaster. Lucifer. In full Lucifer form, the host just has to think of the spell to cast it. Techniques: Swords of Destiny 98% Mastery, Ring of Fire 96% Master, Serpent Maga 98% Mastery, Occupation. Core Disciple of Sunrise Sect, the Guardian of Sunrise Sect, Lord Lucifer of the Abyssal, the Dark Lord, King of Bradford status. Healthy goals: Control the world, grow the Order of Death, utility function. Banker LVL 5, ratio 1000 gold coins, 40 badass points. Runic Teleportation, X-ray vision, also integrated with Eyes of Darkness. Wealth, 15 million gold, special trait. 6-star Alchemist, 5-star. Blacksmith, 5-star Inventor subordinates. Gaia Warrior, loyalty level 100%. Raylene, 5-star Chef, loyalty level 99%. Arya, Assassin, loyalty level 86%. Dead Heinberg, Warrior, loyalty level 45%. Maxine Warrior, loyalty level 98%. Tiberius, Warrior, loyalty level 85%. Sadie, loyalty level 70%. Ricky, loyalty level 95%. Titus, loyalty level 80%. Optimus, loyalty level 80%. The Silent Reaper Crew Pirates, loyalty level 93%. Base of Operation: The Abyssal, the Crypt Kingdom of Bradford Familiars. Nightmare. Royal Dragon, Vidora, 3-headed Hydra, Elemental Manipulation. Wind, 40% Mastery. Fire, 40% Mastery. Lightning, 50% Mastery. Darkness, 45%. Finally, Michael had reached the immortal stage. When he came to this world, he aimed to reach immortality. After 2 years, he achieved his dream. But he wasn't as surprised as he expected it to be. He knew his enemies were stronger than himself. Luckily, he had his own army. Nonetheless, his status window put a smile on his face. Now that he had reached immortality and had enough points, he planned to upgrade his spells and buy a few blueprints to utilize his blacksmith specialization. It was time to forge weapons suitable for the Dark Lord. Chapter 791. Dark Lord meets the Dark Lord. The loyalty of each subordinate remained almost the same since he had last seen. What shocked him more was the experience cap to reach the next level. To reach the next level, he needed a humongous 8 million points. His elemental manipulation increased by 10% except for darkness, which increased by 5%. Before Michael upgraded the spells, he decided to buy a few blueprints for new weapons. He mainly bought these weapons to fit the Big Bertha. Michael accessed the store without a second thought and bought the blueprint to build a torpedo launcher. The host has successfully bought the blueprint for a torpedo, said the system. He bought the torpedo for a whopping 600,000 badass points. The torpedo launcher was worth the price. Could launch 5 torpedoes at the same time. Michael could power it with the Arch energy crystals. According to the system, 2 torpedoes could destroy a frigate, and 4 could destroy a Mano warship. For some reason, he had a gut feeling that he would need to power up his naval army soon. Considering his gut feeling had never betrayed him, he went with it. He wanted to use the remaining points on a new weapon. Now that he had become the 5-star blacksmith, he only needed a blueprint from the system. He would be able to forge the weapon by himself. He rummaged through the blueprints to pick the best weapon. He mainly looked for a sword because of his mastery over swordsmanship. Some swords had a special affinity to elements such as fire. In other words, these swords could conjure flames. Most of these swords had no chance against the dark flames. Hence, a pair of swords called the Dark Swords caught Michael's eyes. Just their name alone was enough for Michael to buy them. In addition, these pairs of swords could withstand the dark flames. The only downside for this pair of swords was the things needed to forge them, especially the ore. According to the system, the ore could only be found in the demon's grave. It was the most dangerous realm in the entire world. The demon's grave would make the treacherous ocean look like a children's playground. He needed 5 materials to forge the swords. Luckily, 3 of them were in the demon's grave, and the other 2 had to be bought from the system, which made forging the swords without a system an impossible task. Michael bought the blueprint for the swords, cost him 800,000 badass points. These 2 purchases exceeded Michael's expectations. After buying these 2, he only had 200,000 badass points in the system. Instead of spending them, Michael decided to save them for another day. He exited the system with the decision to visit the demon's grave soon. As he exited the system, he saw Gaia walking into the room. To his surprise, she seemed serious. She didn't even hug him. "You need to see something," said Gaia. The smile on Michael's face disappeared. He quickly got off the bed and followed Gaia to an empty room in the castle. Gaia didn't speak a word till they reached the room. When they reached the room, the door opened with a slow creak. Michael saw Adelia, and Azazel was waiting for him inside the room with a dark box atop a pillar. "My lord." Adelia and Azazel bowed toward Michael. "Is the armor piece inside?" Michael asked as Adelia nodded. Judging by the looks on their faces, Michael knew something was amiss. Hence, he scanned the box for any booby traps. The system took a few seconds to confirm there were no traps inside but a hologram. As soon as Michael touched the box, it clicked. Soon, the box slowly opened, revealing the armor piece inside. But before Michael could touch the armor piece, a hologram of himself appeared above the chest. Michael took a step back. Just the hologram was enough to make Adelia and Azazel drop to their knees. The holographic Dark Lord's gaze swept across the hall. Michael felt a warmth through his body as though the Dark Lord was scanning him. Since it was not a soul piece but a hologram, Michael knew the past Dark Lord must have used the system to use technology from the Earth. After the warmth faded, the Dark Lord locked his gaze with Michael. "Congratulations. You are doing better than I was expecting," said the Dark Lord. "Finding these armor pieces must be your priority." The Dark Lord paused, sighing heavily. "You must have lots of questions. For now, I can only confirm your suspicions. Yes, I went back in time and became you. Time traveling is not as simple as they showed us where we came from." The Dark Lord smiled a little. Even though it was just a hologram recording of himself, Michael noticed an immense sadness in his eyes. He seemed tired, void of any happiness. Seeing him, Michael immediately thought of Gaia. Did something happen to her? Michael questioned himself. "I cannot explicitly explain to you why I traveled back in time or what mistakes I made. Instead, I was only able to leave you something behind to help you on your path. However, the Dark Lord stopped for a moment before continuing. I must tell you one thing. You will fight Noah, but do not rush into the battle. Noah is not the only enemy you have to fight. Not all people fear and worship gods. Some want to get rid of them. The Dark Lord's voice became stern and serious. They would go to any lengths to do that. So you must protect your own and get stronger, said the Dark Lord. And take care of my Gaia. A miserable smile appeared on his face. Gaia's eyes watered just by seeing him sad. Despite everything, he was still the man she fell in love with. Hence, seeing him hurt and sad made her eyes tear up. No matter what happens, do not fail to protect her. I reset the entire universe so you can get the happy ending that I didn't, he sighed. To Michael's surprise, the Dark Lord turned his gaze toward Gaia. Michael wondered how the hell did he locate Gaia correctly in the hall. I would give anything to see you smile one more time. For the first time, Gaia heard the Dark Lord's voice stutter. He was the emotionally strongest one of the two of them. Yet he seemed so vulnerable at that moment. I love you, my dear Wifu. Finally, the Dark Lord smiled. Soon, the hologram started to flicker. Do not rush into the battle with Noah. Before the hologram faded away, Michael heard the Dark Lord's warning about Noah one more time. After the hologram disappeared, Michael remained still, without uttering a word for a few minutes. Silence fell over them. A few minutes later, Michael took out the armor piece from the chest. It disappeared into Michael's system storage. 2 more pieces, and he would have his armor once again. What happened in this room stays in this room. Got it? Michael asked them, looking over his shoulder. Yes, my lord. Azazel and Adelia nodded. After hearing the Dark Lord's final words, Adelia was worried about her daughter. Took her almost 3 decades to reunite with Gaia, and Adelia didn't plan to lose her again. But no matter how worried she was, she did not question the Dark Lord's ability and love to protect her. If someone could protect Gaia, it was him. Michael then turned around. With a flick of his wrist, he took out 2 silver parchments from the system storage. He threw them at Adelia. Take Saber with you and find me the remaining armor pieces, Michael ordered. Adelia nodded before leaving the room with Azazel. Michael, Gaia came to his side and put her hand on his shoulder. Are you worried? She asked. No. Michael shook his head. He turned around to look her in the eyes. With a gentle smile, he cupped her face. I am not my past. Michael gently massaged her face. We will get a happy ending. I promise you that, said Michael. I know you will, she smiled. The 2 of them shared a moment of intimacy and left the room. They headed for the outside. Just as they stepped outside to greet the Dark Army, he saw Gibson running toward him. He was drenched in sweat. My lord, my. He couldn't speak through his heavy breathing. Take a deep breath and relax, said Michael. Gibson took a deep breath as he was told. My lord. Gibson put his hand inside his robes to retrieve a golden parchment. It came from the Empress. Michael was surprised by Gibson's words. He opened up the parchment to read what the Empress had to say. That's surprising, said Michael after reading the parchment. What is it? Gaia asked. She couldn't hold her curiosity anymore. The Empress wants to meet me. Just like Michael, Gaia was surprised by the sudden invitation too. Might be a trap, said Gaia. I don't think so. She wants us to pick the place and the time. She is only bringing a war god named Bellinar. Bellinar, huh? Gaia remembered the name. She didn't know him when she put 2 arrows into him. But when she asked Sadie about the war god who attended the Aqua Palace auction, Sadie found his identity. You know him? Asked Michael. I should tell you how we got the 3rd armor piece. Just her sly smile was enough for Michael to paint a rough picture of what had happened. At least he was glad that she didn't kill the war god. Let's walk and talk. Gaia grabbed his arm and started to walk toward the waterfall. On her way, she told Michael everything that had happened. Michael listened to her story in utter silence. What she did was the right move. If he was in her shoes, he would have done the same. But Michael worried about the reaction from Gondolin for attacking a war god. We need to meet the Empress and sort this out. We have enough enemies to deal with, Michael sighed. Since the Empress was arriving with only Bellinor, Michael had a feeling she was not looking for a war. Otherwise, she would have sent an army instead of coming to meet him alone. Chapter 792. Master Tactician Nithroel. The Empress scroll was inscribed with special runes. Michael just had to write the place and time of their meeting, and the Empress would be notified on the other end. Michael chose a secluded mountain peak in the Azer continent. Obviously, the time of their meeting was midnight, when he would be at his strongest. Michael sent Arya and Eladir to ensure the place was void of any traps. Although he picked the place, he didn't plan to go there without any plans. Michael left Gaia back in the castle and went to meet the Empress alone. He didn't even bring Nightmare or Azazel. The mountain Michael chose was covered in pearl-white snow. When he was flying toward his destination, the serrated mountains loomed in the distance. He made his way towards them as he had to use arch energy to warm up his body. The blanketing flower white was brooded over the land. Just as he approached, a shoot of snow detached itself and went trundling down one of the mountains. It slid over the knotted edge and then crashed into the chasm below. The silence that followed was spine-chilling. Michael flew to the tallest peak of the mountain, where he asked the Empress to meet him. The heaven-touching apex of the mountain was drenched in brilliant light. Spikes of thin light from the stars above impaled the snow in a bristling, moving line. All across one's line of sight, the tips of the mountain range stuck up like a row of thorns. Swaddled around them were necklaces of powdery snow. The air became arctic cold as Michael came closer to the top. By the time Michael arrived at the top, he saw an elven woman and a man in a golden fur coat waiting for him. Michael recognized the elven woman as the Empress thanks to all those portraits in Gondolin. It wouldn't be an understatement to say every house in Gondolin had at least one portrait of the Empress. The people loved her that much. It was not a forced gesture, but the people worshipped her like a goddess. To be honest, Michael respected the Empress, Nithroel. Despite her military might, she only used wars as a last resort. Instead, she advocated peace through diplomacy. That's what Michael loved about her. The people who feared him respected Nithroel. As he descended to the ground, Bellinor's body tensed up. Michael was not in his Dark Lord armor. On the contrary, he just wore a long black coat with sleeves rolled up to his elbow, a black shirt with his first 3 buttons opened up, and matching black trousers and boots. His shoulder-length hair fluttered in the cold breeze. Bellinor expected a bulky man with an evil face in black armor. But Michael surprised him with his rather normal look. Even the Empress was stunned. To Michael's surprise, the Empress was just a few months' cultivation away from breaking through to the immortal stage. There was something strange about her. "Your Imperial Majesty," Michael addressed the Empress with her title. She smiled when she sensed the respect in his tone. She lived long enough to differentiate between puffery and true respect. Unlike the reports she heard, the Dark Lord seemed warm and friendly. But she could see the devil within him. He was capable of unimaginable things. In her mind, what happened to Ithilien and the Thusian Empire was just a sample of what he could do. "How may I address you?" asked Nithroel with a warm smile. To Michael's surprise, she seemed different from the racist elves he had seen in Mazeroth. "I think Ghost would do just fine," said Michael. It was a simple gesture to get onto the Empress' good side. He didn't want to be her enemy even if he couldn't be her friend. The last thing Michael wanted was to antagonize the Empress and make enemies out of the most powerful empire. "This is Bellinor. You might know him," said Nithroel, looking at Bellinor. "It's unfortunate that you bought something of mine." Michael's tone was neither too arrogant nor apologetic. He didn't even ask for forgiveness, which might be considered a sign of weakness. The Empress walked toward the mountain's edge. As far as one could see, there was nothing but an endless forest blanketed with snow. Michael joined her at the edge and watched the scenery in silence. Except for the howling wind, they heard no sound. Michael broke this silence after a few minutes. "Why did you want to meet me, Your Imperial Majesty?" asked Michael. He was curious, to say the least. "The same reason why you agreed to this meeting," answered Nithroel. "Alliance," Michael joked as the Empress chuckled. Bellinor was truly surprised. The Dark Lord seemed so calm and cool beside the Empress. Eleanor forgot the last time someone had talked to her like this. "Not so fast, Ghost," said the Empress. "I heard you don't like beating around the bush." "You heard right," said Michael. "Blackmane had to say lots of interesting things about you." Michael recalled his meeting with the pirate lord Blackmane. The pirates used to think the most powerful pirate lord was on a voyage, looking for treasures, but instead he was serving the Empress all those times. He came to meet Michael in Aden when he abolished the pirates and killed Pirate Lord Vance. He struck a deal with the Dark Lord for an island on the southern continent. In addition, Michael agreed not to attack the merchants from Gondolin or any other elven kingdoms. Michael had been keeping his part of the bargain till to this date. In exchange, the Royal Navy had never stepped foot on the southern continent. As a result, there was no pillaging or piracy in the southern continent seas. Instead, the merchants paid 20% of whatever they brought to the Dark Army patrolling the seas. The pirates used to hate things they got without pillaging. But after a while, they started to love getting paid doing nothing. They just had to patrol the seas like border patrol and take things from the merchant ships. If a Dark Army ship had decided to take more than 20% or harm a merchant ship, Corey would take them to a rocky island and leave the crew there to rot in the sun alive. Fortunately, no pirate had tried to break the rules. "Speaking of him, I haven't seen him since Aden. How is he doing?" asked Michael. "In seclusion, I am afraid," answered Nithrol. The Empress voluntarily gave him a bit of secret news. She wanted the Dark Lord to know that he was not the only one who could make Southerners stronger with cultivation. Michael was slightly surprised but didn't worry about Southerners cultivating in her army. He expected a lot more surprises from the Empress. "I want the same deal I got from you earlier, Ghost. No more attacking my people." Her voice became a bit colder. "It won't happen again." Michael requested nothing from the Empress. Although Eleanor bought the armor piece, they had no right to attack him. Gaia might have left him alive, but she attacked him nonetheless. It was kind of the Empress to let go of the matter so quickly. "Was that the only reason you asked me to meet you?" Michael asked the Empress. The Empress stared at the sight before her without uttering a word. Her gaze was locked onto the horizon. Silence fell over them. Finally, the Empress took a deep breath. "What do you know about Han Torum?" Michael picked his brain and remembered the name. He heard about this place when he was in Gondolin. "If I am right, it's one of the great 8 clans. Han Torum is a dwarven clan. Why did you ask?" "Recently, they started to build some dangerous contraptions. Weapons, to be precise. These are untested weapons that are capable of hurting thousands." "Sounds like great weapons. If it's capable of hurting that many people, then it doesn't matter whether they are tested or not," said Michael. He knew all about the history between the elves and the dwarves. It was really surprising to see the dwarves still looking for revenge even hundreds of years later. He had to admire their resolve to hurt the elves. If those weapons made the Empress ask for the Dark Lord's help, Michael could tell how dangerous these weapons were. He felt curious as he knew dwarves' talent for building mass destruction weapons. "And explain to me why I should care about the dwarves and their little toys?" asked Michael. The dwarves might be great builders and engineers but lacked powerful cultivators. If Michael wished, he could bring mass destruction upon their kingdoms. "Simple. The Guardian Guild is negotiating with the dwarves to buy those weapons as we speak," said the Empress. She was nonchalant. "I have a feeling you don't like the Guardian Guild getting stronger. With these weapons and Supreme Guardian's guidance, they could change the tide of war." "What do you want me to do, Your Imperial Majesty?" asked Michael, although he knew what was in her mind. "Whatever you want. I'd appreciate it if you could talk some sense into those dwarves. If you do that, you'd be helping both you and me." Michael saw a glimpse of a master tactician who decimated the dwarves single-handedly. She was using him to deal with the dwarves. Judging by the Empress' character, Michael knew she would have tried to talk with the dwarves. However, he didn't think the dwarves had listened to her. Those bulky, bearded bastards hated nothing more than the elves. They would gladly give their lives to see the elven kingdom burn to the ground. Michael wouldn't have meddled with this issue if this matter didn't involve 2 great clans. It would be a headache for Michael in the long run if the dwarves built weapons for the Guardian Guild. Instead, he wanted to get his hands on those weapons. Else, he would destroy them before they fall into the hands of the Guardian Guild. "I will look into this," said Michael without making any promises. The Empress smiled. With a single negotiation, she made the Dark Lord himself deal with the dwarves. Now she had fewer things to worry about and more time to develop her empire. "Good move, Nithroel," Michael said to himself. Chapter 793. Preparations for Demon's Grave. After he met with the Empress, Michael returned to his castle. He summoned Gaia and Adelia to the meeting room. Michael told them about the meeting and how the Empress wanted him to deal with Hontorum. Initially, Gaia seemed furious at the Empress for using them as her pawn, but after hearing the deal between the dwarves and the Guardian Guild, she calmed down. "First, we need to know more about Hontorum and Dalgarum," said Michael. Dalgarum was a dwarven kingdom where Hontorum was located. However, the dwarves were extremely cautious about foreigners, especially other race members. Visiting Dalgarum as a human would only get him extremely vulgar remarks and scorns. "We need diversity in our army and subordinates," said Michael. At that moment, most of his subordinates consist of humans. Although his army had vampires, a few demi-humans, and a couple of orcs, most of whom were humans. Michael always thought of changing that, but he didn't have the time to recruit more people, especially when their expenses exceeded their income. "You know we can't afford to recruit more people," said Gaia. "I am working on that. Some of the things I need to forge my swords are in the Demon's Grave." "Demon's Grave?" Adelia almost shouted. Demon's Grave was the most dangerous realm in the world. No one, even immortals, feared going to that place. Granted, it contained countless treasures and rare plants, yet they weren't worth their lives. Yes, whatever I find there would be worth millions or even billions. It will keep us floating until we find a permanent source of income. Michael had something in mind, but he needed some special herbs. The realm didn't only contain the materials to forge swords, but also create something that would rain gold coins. "If we go to the Demon's Grave, who's going to deal with the dwarves?" asked Gaia. To her shock, Michael shook his head. "You are not coming with me?" Gaia creased her brows while clenching her fist. She hated sending Michael alone to the most dangerous place in the world. If she was there, she could have his back. "I made my decision. You are to deal with the dwarves and those weapons they are building." Michael's voice was stern. The look in his eyes left no room for Gaia to negotiate. In the end, she could only agree. "At least take Nightmare or Vidora with you," said Gaia. Michael thought about her suggestion for a few moments and decided to take Vidora with him. Why? Because he wanted to spend more time with Vidora. Besides, they might help him on his journey through the Demon's Grave in one way or another. At least he would have someone to talk to. "I will take Vidora with me." Gaia heaved a sigh of relief. "While I am gone, deal with Hontorum. Try to snatch the weapons for us. If you can't, destroy them." "I don't want those to reach the Guardian Guild," said Michael. Although Gaia was reluctant to stay here while he was in the Demon's Grave, she knew the importance of the task at hand. Hence, she didn't argue with him. After everything was said and done, Michael dismissed Adelia and Gaia. He wanted to be alone for some time. In a blink of an eye, he reached his room from the meeting hall. Before leaving for the Demon's Grave, he needed to do some things as preparations. One of them was meditation. He sat on his bed with his eyes closed. He ignored the sounds outside and random thoughts in his mind. It took him a few moments to clear his mind of everything. Michael lost track of time. By the time he opened his eyes, the sun had woken from its slumber to paint the world with its golden rays. Of course, the dark ocean remained as dark and gloomy as ever. He put on his old Dark Lord armor and went to the armory. The armory was a spacious hall with hundreds or even thousands of armor stands and weapon racks. At that moment, they had more racks and stands than actual armors and weapons. Such a sorry state, Michael sighed. His growing army desperately needed new weapons and armors. Many in the world still didn't realize how hard it was to be the Dark Lord. They thought that he'd just kill people and stay in the castle. But in reality, he had to deal with all day-to-day things, even when he had subordinates. He walked toward a weapon rack, where he saw several swords lined up. He randomly picked a few and put them in his system storage. He then turned his head toward a black metal door in the corner. When he pushed the door, it opened with a creak. He saw several crates filled with colorful points and pills. Michael waved his hand as a couple of crates, and a bunch of pills disappeared from the room. He had no time to refine new pills and potions. Hence, he took them from the storage. After taking everything he needed, Michael went to the surveillance room to meet Azazel. On his way, he greeted the dark army soldiers guarding the castle. "My lord." Azazel immediately bowed when he saw Michael entering the room. Michael stared at the mirrors with various size in them. The surveillance room in the castle was just a temporary setup. Their main setup was still in the dark forest. But Michael didn't come to monitor the mirrors. "Azazel, bring me the map that shows the entrance to the demon's grave," said Michael. Unlike Gaia and Adelia, Azazel was neither surprised nor shocked by Michael's words. To him, it was only natural for the Dark Lord to venture into places where normal beings could not. As far as Azazel was concerned, the demon's grave would be no challenge for the Dark Lord. "Give me a second, my lord." Azazel disappeared from Michael's sight for a second. Then he appeared again with a scroll. "Here it is, my lord." Azazel handed over the scroll to Michael. Michael opened the scroll to see the map of the Azer continent. The demon's grave was marked with the skull. The entrance was located at the edge of this world. There was nothing but an endless ocean around it. Sailing to the entrance was not an option because of the dangers along the way, such as raging storms, violent sea monsters, and lightning storms that were powerful enough to kill a soul-refining stage cultivator instantly. One only had a slight chance of reaching the entrance by flying. Once he had left the Azer continent, there would be no place for him to rest or land. "I suggest bringing arch-energy crystals with you, my lord. It would take 7 nights and 7 days to reach the entrance from here. You'll need to replenish your energy," said Azazel. Although there were pills to replenish one's energy, the arch-energy crystals were several times more powerful than them. Moreover, they could be absorbed faster. "I was thinking the same," said Michael as Azazel handed over a space ring filled with arch-energy crystals to Michael. Michael liked Azazel's initiative. He patted Azazel on the back. "Bring Vidora to Raylene's garden," said Michael before leaving the surveillance room. Afterward, he flew straight atop his usual meditation spot. The air on top of the Sword Hilt Mountain smelled like sweet flowers. Raylene's flowers blossomed, swaying left and right with the cool breeze. Michael could see the entire floating mountain from the spot. He noticed the castle construction works had been slowed down due to a lack of gold coins. Hopefully, his venture into the demon's grave would change the current situation. If it wasn't for Gaia's extraordinary talent for managing a treasury, he would have gone bankrupt by now. Noah put a huge dent in his plans by closing down the majestic chains in Hades. Because of that, Michael had to find something that could not be closed down. He had just the right thing in his mind. Unfortunately, he had to go deep into the demon's grave to get the required items. Michael waited for Azazel to bring Vidora to him, while Nightmare accompanied Gaia on her journey to Dalgarum. As Michael was enjoying the gloomy yet captivating sight of the dark ocean, Azazel arrived at the place with Vidora atop his shoulder. "Where are we heading?" asked Iag with excitement glimmering in her eyes. "Demon's grave," Michael calmly said. The excitement in Iag's eyes multiplied by several times. Her eyes sparkled. "Really? Man, I hate being cooped up in here." "Finally, some worthy adventure," said Iag. Even Cain agreed with her, which was a rare sight to see. They flapped their tiny wings and landed just right on Michael's shoulder. "Please tell me we are leaving right now," Sarba asked, tilting his head. Michael rubbed his chin gently with a smile. "We are leaving right now," said Michael. Sarba and Iag grinned ear to ear. Even Michael smiled, looking at their funny expression. Chapter 794 Fighting a Kraken. Michael flew toward the demon's grave without taking a break. Some of the people in Azer noticed a black streak in the sky due to Michael's spell. The sea stretched endlessly, going past the horizon. A sparkling blue blanket covered everything as far as one could see. It was a rolling, rollicking blanket teeming with life. The salty smell was so strong that one could taste it dancing on one's taste buds. Fedora enjoyed the sight around them. The ocean itself looked like an enormous pool of wonder. It was exceptionally blue that day with a slight green undertone. Simply put, the sea seemed calm, but the storm was on the horizon. Although the ocean looked calm and serene, Michael sensed powerful creatures swimming deep under the water in his environmental scanning. "Be on alert," Michael warned Fedora. Sarba had keen senses, but it wasn't as developed as Michael's environmental scanning. It took Sarba a few minutes to sense the threats lurking under them. Ayag saw a silhouette of a giant creature deep within the ocean. She could swear she felt it was staring directly at her. "Hey, Ghost. Something is in there," said Ayag. "I know. Let's just ignore it," said Michael. The unknown creature was at the fusion stage. With its enormous size and buddies surrounding it, battling the creature would just be a waste of time and energy. Besides, Michael wasn't here to terrorize the sea creatures. Instead, he wanted to reach the demon's grave without a battle. He quickened his pace and put a safe distance between himself and the creature. The more he flew toward the demon's grave, the darker and worsening the weather became. He was warned of the weather and the powerful creatures lurking in the sea around the demon's grave. It would take an immense amount of luck and power to reach the entrance, so one could only imagine how dangerous the demon's grave would be. There was a reason why even the immortals feared this place. Fedora wrapped their tail tightly around Michael's neck to escape the raging storm. Streaks of crimson-red lightning flashed across the sky. The sky was painted with a mix of eerie red and black. Coupled with the dark blue sea, the sight had a devilish tone to it. Moreover, the howling wind sounded like something otherworldly screaming to escape the sea itself. Powerful lightning struck from the sky chaotically. Michael navigated through the lightning storm without getting struck, thanks to his cat-like reflex. "The name Demon's Grave fits this place," said Sarba. He seemed slightly uncomfortable looking at the red sky. "Is there any connection between the demon race and this place?" asked Ayag. Kane was surprised that Ayag actually asked something that didn't sound ridiculous in his mind. To be honest, he was about to ask that question to Michael. "Well, find out. But I think there might be some connection," said Michael. He still didn't know who else knew about the existence of demons. As far as he knew, Azazel was the only living demon in this world. If it wasn't for the system, he couldn't have brought the demon back to life. Michael was confident with enough time and resources, he could not only find more demons but also resurrect this magical race. Once he had hundreds or thousands of Azazels, he would be a real threat to all the Great Eight clans. "Did you find anyone who ventured into the demon's grave and survived?" asked Kane. Michael shook his head. "No. But I heard there is someone in the Guardian Guild who knows about the place more than anyone in the world. Even Lord Information has little to nothing of this place," said Michael. "Which makes this place more worth the visit," Ayag said as Michael suddenly stopped flying. Ayag frowned. "Why did you stop?" asked Ayag. On the other hand, Sarba realized the reason behind Ghost's action. He sensed a powerful being moving faster and faster toward them. In the ocean before them, Ayag vaguely saw a shadow emerging from deep within. Michael slowly flew backward. According to his senses, the creature was gigantic. Moreover, it was at the half-immortal stage. Suddenly, several ripples appeared in the ocean. Michael felt like the sea itself shaking to the core. As he flew backward, a monstrous creature dashed out of the ocean. It was a giant octopus-like creature. "Kraken," Michael mumbled under his breath. He never thought a creature from folklore and legends back on Earth would come to life before his eyes. The books didn't do justice to this monster. Compared to its size, Michael looked puny. It had countless tentacles that could destroy a Mano warship with a single swipe. The monster roared viciously. Its roar sounded louder than any thunderclaps Michael had ever heard. Just its size and appearance were enough to terrify anyone. Even Michael was stunned by the Kraken. Its dark red skin glistened under the red sky. Putrid smell nauseated Sarba's senses. This smell came from the Kraken itself. The Kraken stared at Michael with its big eyes. For some reason, the Kraken held extreme hatred in its eyes. Michael felt like the Kraken and he had some kind of history, but Michael had never even imagined a Kraken being alive, let alone having a history with them. Once again, the Kraken roared. It caused the ocean to sway to one side. After the second roar, the Kraken swung one of its tentacles at Michael. For a giant monster, its movements were fast. But Michael was faster. He simply evaded the tentacle by flying away. The tentacle missed as it hit the ocean, creating an explosion. Michael immediately fought back with lightning. He raised his hand as black bolts of lightning crackled around his arms. These tiny bolts merged to form one single bolt of lightning that shot out of his fingertips. Since it was a giant creature, Michael didn't need to worry about his aim. His lightning bolt hit the Kraken's skin near the left eye. The monster roared as the lightning bolt penetrated its thick skin for a meter. Some kind of purple liquid spurted out of the wound as the monster roared in pain. Michael wondered where the sound was coming from. He didn't stop with one bolt of lightning. Instead, he continued to bombard the creature with his black lightning bolts. The monster roared as it swung its tentacles viciously, hoping to crush Michael. Yet, none of its tentacles were able to touch Michael. If he was at the half-immortal stage, the creature could have stood a chance. But now, the creature could only dream of defeating him. To Michael, this Kraken was just a dummy to test his powers. Michael flew around the creature, firing bolt after bolt at the monster. Suddenly, Michael dashed forward. A wave of dark flames suddenly shot out of Michael and burnt the creature's skin. The waves of flames pulsated from Michael's body. Because of the dark flames, the temperature in the air rose significantly. The creature swung its entire body viciously to escape Michael's wrath. While shooting lightning bolts from his fingertips, Michael raised his other hand as the sky above him rumbled. Soon, darker clouds appeared in the sky. Ayag raised her head as she saw several boulders materializing in the air. Suddenly, they were lit with crimson-red flames. He finally cast his meteor spell to end the monster's pathetic life. At that moment, 5 large meteors soared through the air toward the Kraken. Sarba heard a sizzling noise in the air as he smelled a strange burning smell. It took a few seconds for the Kraken to see the meteors. Grhhhhhhhh, the creature roared. But this time, the roar was tinged with fear. The creature tried to submerge under the water as Michael fired a lightning bolt at its eyes. A splash of white goo spurted out of its eye. The creature was stunned by the attack. Utilizing this moment of stun, Michael brought down the meteors upon the Kraken's head. Upon hitting the creature's head, the first meteor exploded into fiery bits and pieces. Purple blood splashed across the sea and floated on the ocean. The second meteor muffled the Kraken's roar. This time, the creature's skull was caved in. Even the ocean's surface was on fire because of the spell. At last, the third meteor hit the Kraken with enough force to turn its head into a purple mush. The Kraken let out a miserable cry before falling down into the ocean. "You sealed your fate when you decided to attack us," Ayag snickered. Michael immediately dashed at the creature before cutting down chunks of flesh from its body. In addition, he scooped up the purple blood in a large glass mug for his alchemy experiments. Even though the creature was injured too much to fight, Michael didn't hear any notifications from the system. It meant one thing: the monster was still alive. Michael slowly flew toward the creature's mushy head. He hovered right between the Kraken's eyes. For a moment, Michael remained silent. He respected the monster, although it chose to attack him and died a pathetic death. He raised his hand slowly and pointed his fingertips at the creature. Soon, a thick black bolt of lightning fired out of his fingertips. When the bolt hit the monster's already damaged head, it exploded into a purple mist. Michael flew upward in a blink of an eye, avoiding all the purple blood and pieces. Finally, Michael heard the system's notification in his head. He felt pity for the creature and almost felt bad for slaying such a majestic monster. But the Kraken left him no choice. Deep down, Michael started to learn about the dangerous lurking in the ocean. He knew this was just a start, and more threats would be on his way. After taking a deep breath, Michael continued his journey toward the entrance. Chapter 795 Intelligent Bat. After killing the Kraken, who was at the half-immortal stage, Michael received 1 million experience points. He still needed 7 million experience points to reach level 5. Just the Kraken on the outskirts was at the half-immortal stage. So Michael could imagine how strong the creatures and dangers inside the demon's grave were. They continued to head toward the demon's grave while hoping for another monster to jump out of the sea. Michael sensed several other half-immortal monsters, but they didn't attack him. Michael couldn't recognize some of the monsters. For instance, he vaguely saw a creature that resembled a giant human eye. The monster blinked when Michael sensed it. He flew for 2 days without a battle. Some creatures were able to sense the overwhelming power radiating from Michael. They were intelligent enough not to attack him. On the 3rd day, Michael was flying with Vidora expecting trouble. He couldn't tell if it was morning or evening. Everything looked the same in the ocean around the demon's grave. The area looked as gloomy and eerie as ever. After flying for a few hours, Michael noticed violent ripples in the sea. He slowed down as he sensed a fusion stage monster before him. Water splashed all over the place when it dashed out of the sea. This red monster had a large spherical body crowned with horns that floated slowly through the air. They had a single blue eye over a large mouth which was persistently twisted into a Cheshire cat-like grin, showing a series of nasty teeth and a brownish interior. The monster immediately belched a ball of blue lightning while creating tiny monsters similar to it from the back. These tiny monstrosities flew toward Michael, making some kind of cackling noises. A lightning bolt shot out of Michael's fingertips at one of the tiny monsters. When the lightning bolt hit the tiny monster, it exploded with enough force to push Michael back several meters. Vidora was almost thrown out of Michael's shoulder. Quickly, they crawled into Michael's armor. At that moment, the ball of lightning reached Michael. Before it could hit Michael, the responsive shield appeared around Michael, saving Michael from getting blasted off. The lightning ball exploded upon hitting the responsive shield. To Michael's surprise, he got no experience points for killing a tiny monster. He sensed several other monsters moving toward them due to their battle. Hence, Michael decided to end this battle sooner than later. He immediately cast the Ring of Fire to burn down all the tiny monsters at the same time. The dark flames pulsated in rings around Michael. One by one, the creatures exploded. Unfortunately, the big monster was way out of the flames' reach. Hence, it escaped the dark flames. The sky was lit with bright flashes as the creatures exploded like bombs. The big monster created more of them as fast as Michael killed them. Since these tiny creatures gave him no experience points, Michael decided to kill the big one. In a blink of an eye, Michael evaded the lightning ball and dashed at the monster using a lightning dash. Michael enveloped himself with the dark flames on his way. When the creature opened its mouth to belch another lightning ball, Michael moved his body, facing the ocean, and shot through the creature's mouth like a bullet. The creature howled as one could see a hole on the other side of its mouth. The creature hovered aimlessly in the air, making groaning noises. Michael did not wait till the monster bled to death. On the contrary, he bombarded the monster with lightning bolts. He cast the Ring of Fire once again to burn the creature to a crisp. The monster couldn't stand a chance against 2 of Michael's spells at the same time. As the creature was burning, the air reeked with a strange putrid smell. Michael immediately unsheathed his swords, cutting a few chunks of flesh and scooping down its bluish blood as samples. With these samples, he might be able to figure out the origins of these monstrosities. Ding! Congratulations to the host for killing a fusion stage level 4 monster. The reward is 500,000 experience points and 10,000 badass points. Michael heard the system notification right before the creature fell into the ocean. Most of its body was charcoaled by the dark flames. The surface turned dark gray as the creature dissolved in the salt water. Is it over? Sarba craned her head out of Michael's armor. We should have fought that ugly. Ayag put her head out again and snickered at Sarba. Although Vidora was at the soul refining stage and just a few months of cultivation away from hitting the fusion stage, their physical body remained small. The system needed to be at level 9 to learn more about Vidora and the reason behind their small physical stature. For now, Michael had bigger things to worry about than Vidora's physical transformation. Nightmare went through his metamorphosis when he reached the body-strengthening stage. Ever since then, he had been growing up to be a big dragon. However, Vidora remained almost the same as when they were hatched from the egg. Due to their small physical body, fighting other monsters was tough even though they had the cultivation power to do so. Moreover, they didn't have powerful offensive abilities yet. Iag could seldom create sonic waves, while Sarba had special senses. Other than that, they had nothing. On his way forward, Michael battled a few more monsters similar to the one he had fought earlier. He killed them all within a few moments. To him, they were just practice dummies. But the closer he moved to the demon's grave, the stronger the monsters became. Even the fusion stage monsters had such ferocity and ruthlessness. If Michael had been at the half-immortal stage, he would have been in trouble. On the night of the third day, Michael thought about taking a bit of rest. Since they had no island or a place to land, he had to stay in the air and replenish his energy. By the time Michael stopped flying, Vidora had fallen asleep. Michael flew above the clouds to see the crimson-red sky above. He wondered what made the sky remain blood-red around the demon's grave. For some strange reason, he had a feeling that a massive war had taken place here. The moon glowed in the distance, but instead of sparkling blue light, it radiated blood red. Despite the monsters around him, Michael stopped flying to take a break. He took out a few snacks and refilled his belly. Then, he drank some potions to replenish his energy. He still didn't feel like absorbing the arch-energy crystals in his system storage. While he was gulping down potions, he saw a black line on the horizon. The line moved past the moon. A few seconds later, the black line grew bigger. He looked closer at the thing to see a giant bat flying toward him. It was just as dark as midnight. Except for its razor-sharp white fangs, everything else was black. Surprisingly, the bat was at the fusion stage. The bat didn't back off even after sensing Michael's cultivation stage. This bat was either powerful enough to fight him or extremely stupid to pick a fight. The closer the bat got, the bigger it looked. Casts a giant shadow in the clouds. Without slowing down, the bat dashed at Michael with its claws open. To Michael's surprise, the bat cut him in the elbow before he could dash away. For a monster at the fusion stage, it was extremely agile and fast. He felt a sharp pain in his shoulder for a moment. Then, the APD injected a healing potion into his bloodstream as the wound closed up in a blink of an eye. The bat viciously tried to cut open Michael with its razor-sharp claws. It didn't use any spells or energy attacks but just raw brute strength. Michael swayed his body left and right, evading the claws. He flew around the bat, firing lightning bolts. But the bat barrel rolled and flew away, escaping each and every lightning bolt, which surprised Michael. His lightning bolts were faster than any sniper's, yet the bat evaded it without breaking a sweat. The bat produced a strange clicking noise as it flew around Michael. Michael immediately cast the Ring of Fire because it was an area-off effect spell rather than a precision spell like Ignitia. A wave of dark flames shot out of Michael's body. The cold weather became hot as the temperature in the air rose up. The bat screamed but flew high and swung his body, comfortably evading the flame wave. It kept a safe distance from Michael instead of flying toward him, which showed Michael the bat's intelligence. Michael continued to attack the bat while trying to figure out its weakness. Since it was as fast as him, there was no point or use in casting the meteor spell. The bat proved to be a challenge, even for an immortal. This bat's intention didn't seem to kill him, but to exhaust him and his energy. The bat studied Michael's strategy and spell. It was adjusting its battle tactics according to Michael's battle prowess. As they continued their battle, more and more monsters moved toward them. Michael prepared himself for an all-out battle. "I can hear some kind of weird noise from the bat," Sarba whispered to Michael. But Michael didn't hear a sound. Yet again, Sarba's senses were more powerful than Michael's. "Echolocation," Michael mumbled. "Occasionally missing content. Please report errors in time." Chapter 796, Nearing the Demon's Grave. "The bat is using some kind of noise to move around," said Sarba. He heard a low-pitched whistling noise coming from the bat. Because Michael was born on Earth, he knew about bats. Of course, he didn't do masters on bats, but he knew enough to know the bats navigate using echolocation by emitting high-frequency sound pulses through their mouth or nose and listening to the echo. Wait a minute. I have an idea. Ayag quickly lifted her head from his armor. Grgh. Ayag growled as though she was trying to belch out something. Michael knew what she was trying to do and gave her the time. He fired flame waves to keep the bat away from him. It took Ayag a few minutes to produce a sonic wave. Michael only saw a ripple in the air but didn't hear anything. However, the bat screeched. It sounded like it was in sudden pain. The bat dived down clumsily. The sonic waves messed up with its high-frequency sound pulses. Fuck yeah. It worked. Ayag shouted with excitement. Michael used this opportunity. He immediately fired a bolt of lightning that hit the bat right in his belly. The bat screamed in pain. Blood spurted out from its belly. However, the app's skin was surprisingly tough. Even Michael's black lightning bolt was able to penetrate the skin a couple of inches. Michael hit the bat a couple of more times. Unfortunately, when he tried to fly closer and use the dark flames, the bat steadied itself. Quickly flew away from Michael. Meanwhile, Ayag jumped back on Michael's shoulder. Her eyes glimmered with excitement and confidence. This was the first time in a long time Ayag felt such excitement. Felt like something awakened inside her. Come here, you fucking overgrown rodent, Ayag shouted. The bat returned her snicker with a roar. Kept flying around Michael, hissing like a snake. Since the bat had recovered from the sonic waves effect, it managed to evade Michael's lightning bolts. Get me closer to the bat, Ayag ordered Michael. He liked the confidence in Ayag's tone. Granted, Michael could have found a weakness using the system and killed it even without the system. However, now he wanted Vidora to fight the bat. He would provide the needed support. Michael flew behind the bat faster than before. The bat was fast, but Michael was faster. If Michael wanted to close the gap between them, he could have done it. Considering Vidora had to fight the bat, Michael kept a safe distance. Keeping Vidora safe while battling the bat was Michael's first priority. The bat flapped its wings as hard as it could to boost forward. Any normal man would see nothing but a blur in the sky because of the bat's speed. Just a bit closer, Ayag said. Her throat radiated a dim glow. In a blink of an eye, Michael closed the gap between them as Ayag opened her mouth, firing a sonic wave. The bat screeched as it knew what was about to happen. Compared to earlier, Ayag's second sonic wave was a couple of times stronger. The sonic wave immediately disoriented the bat. It groaned, flying clumsily in the air. To Michael's surprise, Ayag quickly shot another sonic wave. As a result, the bat almost fell down from the sky. Michael turned his gaze towards Sarba and Kane, expecting them to do something. Contrary to his expectation, they did nothing. Hence, Michael had to finish the bat. He couldn't drag the battle for long because of the other monsters around them. The arch energy crystals and pills in his storage weren't unlimited. While the bat was clumsily flying around, Michael raised his hand as a bolt of lightning shot out of his fingertips. The lightning bolt hit the bat in the wings. He aimed the bat's wings as which seemed the softest part of its body. The lightning bolts created several holes in the wings. Soon, the bat started to roar in agony. He quickly flew closer to the bat and cast the ring of fire once again. Thanks to Ayag's disorienting sonic waves, the bat couldn't escape the flame waves. The dark flames burnt its wings. Smoke radiated from its body, along with the smell of burning air. Michael quickly jumped on the bat's body and grabbed its half-burnt wings. The bat screeched as though it was trying to call for help. Ayag seemed exhausted after producing 3 consecutive sonic waves. 3 was her limit. Luckily, Michael did not need Ayag's help anymore. He grabbed the bat's wings and pulled them toward him. The bat screeched as Michael slowly ripped its wings. Blood spurted out from the joint where the wings met its body. Even Michael couldn't rip its wings off so easily. His muscles and veins under the skin bulged up. He could toss a stone weighing a ton simply but had a difficult time ripping off its wings. The bat flew backward and upside down to shake him off, yet Michael stood firmly on its back. Eventually, the wings slowly started to come off of its back. The blood spurted out of its back stank to high heaven. Finally, Michael let out a roar as he tore off the bat's wings completely. The bat roared in pain as blood oozed down. Without its wings, the bat lost control of its body. It began to dive down toward the ocean, but Michael grabbed the bat by its neck and flew upward. The bat's eyes burned with rage. It tried to rip Michael apart with its claws. Michael let go of its neck and grabbed the bat's claws. The two of them made direct eye contact. Unlike the bat, Michael's eyes were as calm as still water. He just had a smile on his face. Michael locked his hands with the bat's claws, slowly squeezing its claws. Ayag hissed as she heard a sickening crunching noise coming from the bat's claws. Michael crushed the claws with his bare hand to make the bat suffer. He was simply annoyed by the bat. Suddenly, Michael's eyes turned pitch black as the dark beams shot out from his eyes. The bat finally stopped moving. In its head were two large holes where the dark beams went through. Michael looked at the bat from head to toe as the dark beams cut the bat in half. He tossed one half into the sky above, quickly cut a chunk of flesh, and scooped up a blood sample from the other. By the time the second half of the bat reached him, he cast the ring of fire to burn the body to ashes. Ding! Congratulations to the host for killing a fusion stage level 5 monster. The reward is 500,000 experience points and 10,000 badass points. He heard the system's voice in his mind. Before Michael could rejoice about the experience points, he noticed another bat flying toward him. Looking at the bat, Ayag slowly raised her head. "I'll take care of it," Michael simply said. He was nonchalant. Slowly, the area around Michael darkened. He waited for the bat to come closer, and when it did, Michael cast the Sileni's spell to slow down the time itself around him. The bat didn't even realize it was trapped in a time-slowing bubble. Michael immediately cast Ignitia, the ring of fire and eyes of doom at the same time. He went all in to finish the bat. All the spells hit the bat, ending its life in an instant. His power almost reached the peak of the immortal stage. The bat simply stood no chance against Michael. Plus, it was trapped in a time-slowing bubble where the bat couldn't react in time to avoid the spells. Ding! Congratulations to the host for killing a fusion stage level 6 monster. The reward is 500,000 experience points and 20,000 badass points. Even Sarba and Ayag were surprised by what just happened. One moment the bat was reaching out to claw Michael, and the next it fell down, burnt and cut. After Michael had killed the bat, he sensed several monsters moving away from him. They were intelligent enough to back off. The cloud of darkness freaked out the weak-willed monsters. They may have been strong in terms of cultivation, but they possessed a weak resolve to fight. Hence, they flew away from Michael when they saw the cloud of darkness. Instead of chasing them down, Michael continued to head toward the demon's grave. If he wasted his energy hunting them down, he would be at a disadvantage after entering the demon's grave. Judging by the monsters he had faced till now, he could only imagine how powerful the monsters inside the demon's grave would be. Michael cracked his neck before heading out. He slowly flew toward his destination, enjoying the sight. After 3 days, he had grown accustomed to the eerie red atmosphere and the monsters lurking under the sea. The following day was uneventful. He faced a couple of monsters, but they all ran away after sensing his power. At the end of the 4th day, Michael noticed a tear on the horizon. The realm tear glowed like a bright green star on the red horizon. According to the map, the realm tear was still 2 days' journey ahead of him. He stopped in the sky to look at it for a few moments. Even from miles away, Michael was able to sense a strange energy radiation from the realm tear. This feeling was similar. It was the same energy radiation he felt inside the Shadow Realm. Now that Michael had seen his destination, he increased his speed. While flying toward the realm tear, Michael wondered how Gaia was doing with the dwarves and their new weapons. Vidora fell asleep without a worry in the world. The Hydra felt safe with Michael. At that moment, neither of them had an idea about the connection between Hydras and the demon's grave. They only considered the part demon in the name demon's grave and ignored the grave part. They were in for a surprise inside the demon's grave. Having no idea about the things waiting for them inside the realm, Michael and Vidora flew towards it. Chapter 797, Meeting the Mysterious Oracle. Again, Michael continued his journey toward the demon's grave with Vidora. At that moment, he was just 2 days' journey away from reaching the Realm Tear. On his way, he fought several monsters and reached 5 million experience points. Once he earned another 3 million experience points, he could reach the Immortal Stage level 5. If he didn't have to save his energy, he could use this place to farm experience points. But exploring the Demon's Grave without being gnawed by some monsters was more important than farming points. The battles he went through were far from effortless. He had to use both his brawn and brains to defeat the monsters. Unfortunately, Vidora was no help in the battle as they helped him in the battle against the bat. After battling the bat, Michael realized the monsters around the Demon's Grave were coming out from the Realm Tear. The closer Michael got to the Realm Tear, the more he felt a powerful yet strange radiation coming from the Realm Tear. Thanks to the APD and the system firewall, the radiation did not affect Michael. To Michael's surprise, the radiation did not affect Vidora. Except for Kane, the others slept on Michael's shoulder. Iag and Sarba snuggled against Michael's neck and slept peacefully. "Hey, Ghost," Kane called Michael. His voice was quiet. "I feel like this place, and we have some kind of connection," said Kane. Michael was surprised. It was so rare to see Kane share his thoughts. "What do you mean?" asked Michael. Kane turned his head toward Sarba and Iag. He stared at them as though he was making sure they were asleep. Then he craned his head out, getting closer to Michael. Michael slowed down. A second later, Kane slowly opened his mouth as Michael noticed a dim green ball of light in his mouth. The light resembled the Realm Tear. The ball of light crackled inside Kane's mouth. Michael's brows arched up. The energy radiation from the light inside Kane's mouth and the Realm Tear was exactly the same. Michael had so many questions in his mind. "What is it? How long since you could do this?" Michael asked Kane in a husky voice. "Do you remember the accident in the castle?" asked Kane. His question made Michael ponder. A while later, Michael recalled an incident that took the lives of a couple of dwarves when they were building the castle on the floating mountain. He remembered Gaia talking about some explosions that went off because of some drunken dwarves. According to her, the dwarves tried to smoke some herbs to get high and accidentally dropped some sparks in the explosive crates. But judging by Kane's look in his eyes, Michael had a feeling the dwarves weren't the culprits. "Yes, I do," Michael nodded without saying anything else. It was an accident, but the dwarves weren't responsible for the explosions. They did come drunk and tried to smoke near the explosives. But the crates exploded because of this. Kane opened his mouth as it lit up like a Christmas tree for a moment. "I accidentally shot out an energy beam which hit the crates. Did they know?" Michael looked at Sarba and Iag. "No." Kane shook his little head. "How did you manage to shoot an energy beam out of your mouth without them knowing?" "They are not the sharpest knives in the bunch, Ghost." Kane rolled his eyes. Michael couldn't argue with Kane. "Does anyone else know about this?" asked Michael. "No." Kane shook his head. "We could ask Mugashiku about hydras, but it's too risky," Michael pondered. They resumed flying toward the Realm Tear while silently discussing the green glow. "He is the only hydra in existence, right?" Kane asked. Michael noticed a sadness hidden deep within Kane's eyes. If he was the last human in the world, he would feel sad too. Only Vidora would know their pain. But Michael really hoped there were more hydras somewhere in the universe. "Life is full of surprises, Kane. Don't lose hope." Michael gently rubbed Kane's head. Thinking about the connection between the Realm Tear and the green glow in Kane's mouth, Michael headed toward the Demon's Grave. Luck was on his side as no monsters showed up to attack him. Eventually, the sky darkened. The howling wind was the only companion Michael had besides Vidora. Suddenly, the howling wind stopped. It was like someone had switched off the wind. Everything became deadly silent. Michael halted his pace. Michael sensed nothing in his environmental scanning map. However, he noticed a strange blue orb of light in the sky above him. The light slowly descended toward him. To Michael's surprise, the orb of light slowly transformed into a woman. The woman before Michael had a square face with a rounded jaw, a flat nose, and narrow lips, and her crimson eyes were sparkling with patience and mystery. Her curly long black hair fluttered in the air as she descended from the sky like a goddess wearing red silk robes. The golden nose stud and the piercing in both her ears added a certain charm to the woman's grace. In addition, she wore Rudraksh bead mala around her neck, while a red bindi occupied the center of her forehead. If Diana was here, she would instantly remember the woman. She was the same mysterious oracle who visited Diana and lifted the curse on Diana's soul 2 years ago. Read chapter 243 to refresh your memories. To this moment, Michael couldn't sense the woman in his environmental scanning. Moreover, the woman radiated no energy. But she was the farthest thing from a commoner. Any oblivious man would drop to his knees and worship such a graceful woman. Just looking at her soothed Michael's mind and soul. For a few moments, Michael just stared at the woman without uttering a word. "I've been waiting for you, Michael," the woman said. Her voice sounded like the perfect melody that mesmerized the soul itself. Took a moment for Michael to realize what he had just heard. He was speechless. How could a strange, mysterious woman call him by his real name? Except for Gaia, no one knew his name in this world. Yet somehow this woman called him by his name. "I know everything about you, Michael," the woman continued. Fortunately, Vidora was deep in their sleep. "I couldn't say the same about you," said Michael. "How did you know my name?" The woman smiled. "As I said, I know everything about you, Michael. Your past, your present, and your future. Not everyone could revisit the remnants of their past." Michael creased his brows as the woman continued. "The armor pieces aren't the only things that survived your time array, Michael. There are things you cannot reset," said the woman. She kept surprising Michael. For some reason, Michael didn't feel threatened by the woman even after she revealed his darkest secrets. He wondered whether she knew about the system's existence or not. "This place is one of the few things your past self left behind. Now it's your responsibility to fix your mistakes." "What do you mean by mistakes? Did I cause all this?" "The demon's grave has existed longer than 2 decades, said Michael as the woman smiled. "You really think your past self existed 21 years ago, don't you?" asked the woman. Michael agreed inside. When he came to this world, Abraz was 21 years old. So Michael thought the Dark Lord reset the universe 21 years ago and, thus, became an infant. But he doubted his theory after hearing the woman's tone. Michael had a hard time doubting her when she was able to call him by his real name. "Then when did my past self exist?" Michael questioned the woman. 5,000 years ago. Everything that happened in your life until now already happened 5,000 years ago, said the woman so calmly. On the other hand, Michael's mind went blank. He was stunned to the core. The woman gave Michael a few minutes to get his thoughts together. "But it doesn't matter how long ago your past self lived. Because of what you did, so many lives have been affected. Entire races have been wiped off because of you. Now you have the chance to fix everything." "Well, most of it," said the woman. "You have a second chance in life, Michael. Do not let hatred and anger consume you. Life is more than being a god and wiping out your enemies. Even enemies can become your friends if you show them compassion." Michael chuckled. "Tell that to my enemies. They are the ones who want to kill me. Why don't you ask them to show some compassion?" asked Michael. "Because they are not the danger, you are." Michael went silent. The woman gestured at Michael to follow her. Since he felt no threat from the woman and wanted to learn more about himself from her, Michael followed her behind. "Who are you?" Finally, Michael asked the woman about her origin. Instead of an answer, she just smiled. "One day in the future, you will know the answer to your question. The time right now is yours," said the woman. "You said the demon's grave was created by something I did. What did I do?" asked Michael. "Why did you reset the time?" Instead of answering Michael, she asked him a question. Michael took a deep breath. He knew that to get more answers, he needed to answer the woman. Plus, he didn't think lying to her was the right move. Hence, he answered her truthfully. "I think it has something to do with Gaia." "Would you say you did that for love?" asked the woman. Michael nodded his head after a while. "You reset the entire universe for love. But there are many kinds of love, Michael," said the woman. "I'd greatly appreciate it if you stop talking in riddles." Michael kept his tone as polite as possible. He did not want to piss off the only person who could give him some answers. Furthermore, she seemed like a being beyond the cultivation stages. Even the system couldn't grasp how powerful she was. I can only give you guidance, Michael. This is your book. So it's you who should write the chapters. Chapter 798 Demon Skeletons, apparently. I wrote some chapters and have torn them apart, Michael joked. True, but you got new pages to write something different this time, said the woman. You didn't tell me who you are. At least tell me why you are here. The woman stopped floating toward the realm tear. Instead, she turned her calm gaze at Michael. Her gaze swept across the ocean around them. Michael felt a strange energy pulse followed by a ripple in the ocean. You won't be bothered by the creatures anymore? The woman's words surprised Michael. Although he still had to test her words, he didn't think she was lying. After all, she did not need to lie to him about anything. Also, Michael. Her gaze fell on Michael once again. Michael felt like her gaze was piercing his soul itself. Every family will have its share of flaws, but just one family is what we have, said the woman. Her gentle words echoed through the sky. Before Michael could ask her anything else, she vanished into thin air. System, what do you think about her? Any idea about her origins? Asked Michael. To Michael's surprise, the system went into complete silence. No matter how many times he asked, the system did not utter a word about the mysterious woman. After a while, Michael could only sigh and continue to fly toward the realm tear. On his way, he recalled her words. He still couldn't wrap his mind around the fact his past self actually lived 5,000 years ago. I must have been freakishly powerful, Michael mumbled under his breath. He saw no point in dwelling on the past. His past self made some mistakes, big ones it seemed, but it didn't mean he would make the same ones once again. In this life, he would go to any length to protect his loved ones. For instance, he promised himself to look after Vidora. If the demon's grave was one of his mistakes, he would fix it. You reset the entire universe for love, but there are many kinds of love, Michael recalled the woman's words. He felt there might be another reason other than Gaia for him to reset the universe. He wondered what the hell happened 5,000 years ago. As he was flying toward the realm tear, he noticed the monsters moving away from him. Not a single monster dared to attack Michael. He even sensed some immortals monsters almost as strong as him. They all avoided Michael. Now he realized why even the immortals dared not to visit the demon's grave. If it wasn't for the woman, he would have had to fight all these monsters. With his speed, the realm tear got closer and closer to him. When he eventually reached the realm tear, he was stunned. He expected a tear in the space for 6 feet or something. But to his shock, the realm tear seemed at least 70 feet from top to bottom. He looked small in front of it. Moreover, it radiated overwhelming energy. What the hell? Ayag finally woke up from her slumber. Her eyes went wide when she saw the realm tear. Michael felt a strange force pulling him into the tear. Are you guys ready? Michael asked Vidora. We were born ready, Agay said with excitement tingling in his spine. Finally, Michael stopped resisting the pull and let loose of his body. The realm tear pulled Michael inside as he disappeared into the tear in a blink of an eye. Everything became blank to Michael. He closed his eyes because of the glow. Feeling the pull, Michael remained with his eyes closed. Vidora snuck back into Michael's armor and clenched the robes tightly. They traveled within the tear for an unknown amount of time. Eventually, Michael sensed the brightness dimming down. Suddenly, he felt a powerful pull. Before he could open his eyes and react in time, he fell into a soft grass field with a thud. Michael slowly opened his eyes to see a murky swamp before him. Everywhere he turned, he saw nothing but ancient cypress trees looming out of the murky water. Their brittle bark was weathered and pitted, scored by the marks of nature and man alike. They seemed to have stood the test of time and won. Any oblivious man wouldn't dare venture this deep into the demon's grave anymore. Only the very foolish or the very brave, or someone with godly powers. Here and there clumps of moss clung desperately, filling the moist air with the scent of decay. The grayish mist covering the swamp added an extra creepiness to the place. Michael picked himself up. His black armor turned brown by the mud. He ascended to the air, but gravity pulled him down back to the swamp. The ground felt semi-solid and gooey. He moved 1 inch and his feet went 2 inches deeper into the mud. Flying was the quickest route out of the swamp. However, when he tried to ascend toward the sky, a powerful force pulled him down. System, can you do something about gravity? Michael turned to the system for its help. No can do. The system level is too low to change the rules of the demon's grave, said the system, making Michael roll his eyes. So you are useless? Michael sighed. The system did not give Michael an answer as he slowly tried to move forward through the swamp. The smelly water was up to his waist. He couldn't help feeling some weird things brushing past his legs underwater. Hope they are fish, Michael mumbled. His environmental scanning map went haywire for some reason. As a result, he was unable to sense the creatures around him. Just a few minutes into the demon's grave, he was already in a bind. But the swamp was far from something that could stop Michael. He looked at Vidora, who sat atop his shoulder. Try to fly ahead, said Michael. He wanted to know whether gravity affected only him or also Vidora. Vidora murmured before flapping their tiny wings. They hovered in the air and remained in the air without being pulled by gravity. So it only affects me, Michael mumbled. Fly ahead and keep me posted, said Michael. But don't fly too far from me. Vajra nodded and flew away. In Michael's head, keeping Vidora close to him would only prevent them from growing up. They needed to face some challenges and life-or-death situations. After all, Michael and Gaia wouldn't be with them all the time. Only by facing dire situations could they really unlock their potential. Simply put, Michael decided to force them to find their powers. Vidora nodded as they flew ahead to scout the area. Even Michael's X-ray vision seemed blurry because of the strange mist around the swamp. Slowly, he dragged himself through the mud. The swamp water smelled like rotten eggs and spoiled meat. Any other man would have thrown up. But thanks to Michael's tolerance for stink, he controlled himself. Fortunately, Michael faced no monsters or creatures while he was in the swamp. Vidora flew back and forth to keep Michael updated about the swamp. As Michael was moving through the swamp, he finally noticed what seemed to be the shore. He smiled. Finally. But his moment of joy was short-lived as he felt something grabbing his legs. Vidora returned to inform Michael about the land. To their shock, Michael disappeared into the swamp water in a blink of an eye. It happened so fast. Holy shit! Ghost? Something pulled him inside. The three heads looked shocked and worried at the same time. They shouted for Michael, yet they only saw bubbles and ripples on the swamp water's surface. Inside the swamp, Michael struggled to free himself from the strange thing's grab. He couldn't see what was before him with his naked eyes. So Michael immediately activated his X-ray eyes. As soon as everything turned blue, he saw a dark figure holding his legs. When he turned his vision to normal, he vaguely saw a brownish skeleton. However, it wasn't a human skeleton. On the contrary, it looked humanoid creature with 2 horns protruding from its skull. He also noticed a few bones that formed a vague shape of wings. The skeleton reminded Michael of Azazel. Wings, horns, and a bulky structure resembled Azazel's physical body. One of the skeletons grabbed Michael's legs, and the other grabbed his shoulder. They tried to drown him. Although drowning wouldn't kill him, Michael wasn't prepared to test his immortality underwater. According to the system, getting killed by other means wouldn't end his life but reset his cultivation. Beheading, on the other hand, would reset his cultivation and make his soul wander until he finds a suitable vessel for the soul. Finding a vessel might take days, months, years, or even decades. Under the water, Michael did not panic. He quickly formed a wind bubble around his head to breathe. The very next moment, the water began to boil because of the dark flames dancing on his hand. The cold water became hot in a few seconds. Michael clenched the skeleton's head with his hand as several cracks formed in the skeleton. In a blink of an eye, the skeleton's head turned into a white powder that dissolved in the water. After taking down the skeleton that was holding his shoulder, Michael turned his focus onto the one grabbing his leg. The dark beams shot out of his hands, creating a sizzling sound. They penetrated the skeleton as it exploded into bits and pieces. Surprisingly, Michael didn't receive any badass points or experience points for taking down the skeletons. System, did you forget something? Michael talked to the system in mind. They are already dead and weak as hell. Why do you expect experience points and badass points for killing such pathetic monsters? The system growled. They didn't feel weak, Michael replied. Mere weak monsters couldn't have pulled him down and held him underwater for a minute. Unlike the system said, they were the farthest thing from being weak. That's because of their innate strength. What did you expect from the monsters in the demon's grave? The system questioned him. Instead of arguing with the system, Michael wanted to escape the swamp water. He hated being watery and stinky. 2 streams of dark fire shot out of Michael's hands and propelled him out of the water like a rocket. From outside, Vidora noticed the water being vaporized by something hot. The temperature in the air had risen significantly. It was enough for them to know what was about to happen. As they expected, Michael shot out of the water and dashed toward the shore before the gravity could pull him down. Chapter 799 Skyhall Angels in Demon's Grave. Michael quickly dashed toward the shore and landed comfortably on solid land. Even after landing, he vaguely saw the skeletons lurking deep within the swamp. These demon skeletons would wait for another one to drown. Their next victim might arrive next month or year, but they would wait because they had all the time in the world. An equally creepy forest surrounded the murky swamp. Dark and misty forest. The only way forward was through the forest. Unfortunately, gravity was still too strong for him to fly. Should we go into the forest? Asked Sarba, but Michael shook his head. Stay with me, said Michael. Once they had entered the forest, there was a high possibility for them to get lost. Even worse, they could get into trouble with another monster. Until he could cross the forest, he wanted Vidora to be with him. Vidora nodded before landing back on his shoulder. A bone-chilling breeze brushed past him. It was like something calling for him into the forest. Michael ignored these strange feelings. The trees in the forest were malady brown. Grains of poison begrimed the bark and gleamed like witch dust. The decaying air and stifling atmosphere provided the perfect abode for those who worshipped the darkness rather than the light. In the dense shadows, spiders clutched their snare strings. Their webs shimmered like meshed steel dipped in silver. Eyes aflame with hunger, they hoped to dine on weak prey and slurp on hot blood. The deeper Michael went into the forest, the darker it became. Everything in the forest seemed primordial. If this demon's grave was indeed his mistake, as the woman said, this place must be at least 5,000 years old. It was the only explanation for the primordial trees. Their sprawling limbs guarded the darkness, blotting out any sunlight. Their bark was mottled and splotched as if the bubbled soup had been frozen in time on its surface. A pungent tang oozed from every sentient being in the forest. Bewailing sounds ghosted through the trees. Whether it was from the predator or prey, only the forest could tell. It was truly a place to make one's veins freeze over. Everything considered edible in another forest was nauseating here. It left Vidora with the same sickening taste of their own blood. It was a forest to be avoided. Michael navigated through the labyrinth of a forest, trying to find a way out. His black armor turned murky and green because of the moths and mud in the swamp. He ignored the blood-sucking leeches littering the ground and hoped they weren't on him. As he was walking through the forest, he suddenly heard a muffled thud noise. It sounded contrary to all creepy nature sounds. Michael quickly raised his hand as the Mark III grappling hook shot out of his wrist and coiled around the branch above him. Since gravity was too strong, Vidora grabbed Michael by his collar and added an extra boost to the grappling hook. Finally, he reached the top. Thanks to the trees being so cluttered, Michael was able to walk on one branch to reach the other. He crouched and strolled without making a sound. Despite being immortal, Michael did not act so brashly. There would always be someone stronger than him until he reached the absolute top. The thudding sound continued to echo through the forest rhythmically. He followed the sound that sounded louder and louder. Eventually, the forest opened up to a circular area void of any trees. The surrounding trees were neatly pruned to prevent someone from looking at the place from above. The thick canopy covered the place, only letting a few rays of light through. To Michael's shock, he saw a portal gate and several people armed to the teeth, digging the ground with some kind of contraption. It looked like a giant spoon that created a thud sound everything it dug into the ground. These men were adorned in light blue armor with angel-like wings made of sharp blades. Michael couldn't see their faces through their masks. With the golden spear in their arms and the wings, they somehow reminded Michael of angels. What surprised him more was he had seen them before. They looked exactly like the one who invaded the Nether Realm. Dalar had to stop bringing undead from the Nether Realm with the portal open because of these people. They are the same men who harvested the undead in the Nether Realm. Kane whispered to Michael while Sarba and Iag remained completely silent. They didn't dare to make a sound that might draw the attention of these armored soldiers. The angels of the Sky Hall, that's who they were. Unfortunately, Michael did not know. He had a closer relationship with them than he actually knew. Diana, his mother, was one of them. In fact, she led a powerful group of angels. "Look!" Sarba whispered as Michael noticed the angels digging a black casket from the ground. The contraption dug the ground deep enough to reveal what seemed to be a burial site. One by one, the angels dragged the caskets out and threw them into the portal behind them. At that moment, Michael counted 11 angels. Surprisingly, they were all at the fusion stage. This piqued Michael's curiosity. A run-of-the-mill organization wouldn't use fusion stage cultivators for grunt work. Since there was no insignia or anything that could be used to reveal their organization, Michael had to move closer. He took out a spider from the system storage and let it crawl toward the angels. "I hate this place. It gives me chills. For me, it's the smell. The place smells like dead." Michael began to hear the angels as the spider crawled closer to them. "I am glad this is the last grave site." Michael frowned. If this was the last grave site, it certainly meant these people were digging up more sites. Whatever was inside the caskets, these people might have hundreds or even thousands of them. No matter what, he wanted to take a look inside the casket. However, alerting these soldiers didn't sit well with Michael. His instincts told him not to kill them, although he could slaughter them quite easily. But easy didn't mean he should do it. Silence. Why do I feel like we are being watched? Suddenly, an angel turned around in Michael's direction. Michael quickly moved behind the bark to hide. The angels slowly walked toward Michael. Their instincts and perception really surprised Michael. He kept a safe distance from them, yet they somehow managed to sense him. Even though he didn't want to fight them, he would have no choice but to fight if they found him. Michael prepared himself for a battle when an angel raised his voice. "Hey, we are ordered to return." The angels who were on their way to the tree Michael was on halted their steps. "He is asking for us." The voice had a tinge of fear and panic. Luckily for Michael, whoever called them was far more terrifying to make them wait than to find him. Finally, the angels turned back and returned to the portal. At first, one of the angels flicked their wrists as the giant spoon-like digging machine flew straight into the portal. Then, they tossed the caskets behind the machine. Afterward, the angels themselves flew into the portal, disappearing from the forest. By the time Michael decided to move his body, the place was empty. The angels didn't bother to close the hole they dug, which worked in Michael's favor. He leaped from branch to branch and eventually landed on the palace where the portal was a few moments ago. The hole was picked clean. As far as Michael could see, there were no caskets left behind. He looked around the place for a few moments to see if they had left behind something that could be used to unveil their identities. Unfortunately, Michael's search bore no fruit. After a brief moment of looking around, Michael returned to the front of the hole they had dug. This hole was at least 8 feet wide and 15 feet deep. "You can't jump down there," said Iag. She was right. Gravity was too strong for Michael to fly upward again. It was weird and strange, but he could do nothing about it. Hence, he decided to drop one of his drones back into the hole. The drone slowly hovered down into the dark hole. They patiently waited outside to get a glimpse of anything but mud. A few minutes later, when Michael was about to conclude that the angels had grabbed all the caskets, Michael noticed the edge of a casket sticking out of the mud. Found something, Michael said to Vidora. A casket? Asked Iag as Michael nodded. Since you can't jump down and carry it on your back, let us go down there, Sarba suggested. Having no other choice, Michael agreed. After he nodded, Vidora leaped into the hole from his shoulder. They dived down until they reached the drone. Despite their small physical stature, they were blessed with enough raw power to carry the casket in their legs. But first, they had to dig out the casket. Little help here, Iag shouted. Their claws weren't sharp enough to dig, so Michael shot dark beams out of his eyes to dig out the casket. Vidora flew aside, avoiding the dark beams. The mud turned ashes around the casket. Careful, don't hit the casket, said Sarba. Soon the casket began to shake. Vidora tightly held the casket by its edge and pulled it out of the mud. Fuck, it's heavy, Iag cussed. The casket was surprisingly heavier than she initially expected. She wondered what the heck was inside. Eventually, Vidora brought the casket back and dropped it with a loud thud. The casket cracked in several places. It was apparent the casket was ancient. But still, Michael was able to see several runes engraved in the casket. He inspected the casket thoroughly. When he activated his X-ray vision, he saw a silhouette of a humanoid being inside. Michael was about to open the casket when he heard twigs and dried leaves breaking behind him. Someone was behind him. Instead of panicking, Michael slowly turned around. Chapter 800 Prank gone wrong. While Michael was in the demon's grave, Sabrina was returning home from Azair, tired and exhausted by flying all the way to Penn Town. The once salmon and lavender sky transformed into a vast expanse of jet black. The night laid down a blanket of darkness. When Sabrina tilted her head skyward, she could clearly see millions of bright stars dotted on the black sky at night, as the thick gloomy clouds shaded over the luminous moon covering its entirety. Penn Town glimmered like a Christmas tree on the horizon. Despite the time, the streets were bustling with crowds and carriages. The baby shower of Princess Catherine and Prince Andrews was a hot topic in the continent. Almost every prominent figure in the world was invited to the event. Usually, coming across a fusion stage warrior was as rare as a four-leaf clover. But that was proven wrong in Penn Town. These fusion stage cultivators arrived at the Penn Town a month early to ensure security. In addition to powerful cultivators, several invisible arrays and runes covered the entire town. These specialized arrays were able to read one's thoughts and alert security if they bore any ill intentions. Only the Empress of Ar had these arrays. But thanks to Rowena, the Winstons could get them. As Sabrina flew toward the manor, she felt a warmth in her body. She didn't freak out as she knew the arrays were scanning her. In the distance, the Winston Manor stood majestically glimmering. The servants went all out in decorations. They almost turned the manor unrecognizable. Rare and beautiful flowers waved their heads, welcoming the gates. Special orbs fired light beams, turning the fountain water a colorful rainbow. The servants of Winston Manor noticed Sabrina in the air and quickly bowed. Their eyes glistened with joy because of their young Miss return. Young Miss Sabrina is back, informed Lady Diana and Lady Imelda. The servants cheered as Sabrina flew straight into the manor through the roof door. Young Missy. As soon as Sabrina landed on the rooftop, she heard a wobbly voice. Surprisingly, she saw Samuel standing before her with his usually neatly combed hair messed up. He looked funny with his nervous smile. Judging by the smell of rum coming from him, Sabrina could guess what made Samuel walk clumsily and smile like a guilty child. Well, Sabrina amused. Are you drunk, Grandpa Samuel? The answer was obvious to Sabrina. Still, she wanted to mess with Samuel. No! Samuel quickly hid the mug of rum behind his back. Since the baby shower was just a week away, everyone in the Winston family enjoyed themselves. But it was surprising to see the stoic Samuel himself get drunk. What's that behind you? Sabrina asked, trying to hold the urge to laugh at Samuel. Young Mississippi. You must be tired. Samuel slowly talked. He found it difficult to stay still and find words. Samuel. Where the hell are you? Suddenly, Sabrina heard Imelda shout from downstairs. Bring me another barrel. Sabrina couldn't believe what she had just heard. It was Imelda. There was no doubt in Sabrina's mind. Now everything made sense to Sabrina. The room behind Samuel was used to store booze for special occasions. It looked like Samuel came here to bring booze to Imelda. A light bulb lit up in Sabrina's mind. She slowly walked toward Samuel. "Why don't you take a short nap, Grandpa Samuel?" Sabrina whispered in a gentle tone as specks of golden light floated into Samuel's mind. Soon, the old man dropped to the ground and began snoring. After putting Samuel to sleep, Sabrina opened the door behind Samuel. The door opened with a creak, revealing countless wooden barrels. The Winstons only opened these barrels for special occasions. Each barrel was at least 100 years old and engraved with a special rune. The air in the room itself had a tinge of sweetness. Sabrina walked toward a barrel and placed her hand on the side as a rune glimmered on the barrel. In a blink of an eye, the barrel shrank to the size of a mug. Sabrina picked up the mug and left the room. She headed to Imelda's room with an amused smile. The manor was just as cheerful inside as it was on the outside. Every corner of the house was decorated with rare flowers, antiques, and light orbs. Moreover, everyone was in such a good mood. Luckily for Sabrina, no one noticed her as they were all in the main hall, and Imelda's room was far from it. After taking a few quick steps, Sabrina reached an emerald green door with Winston family portrait hanging above. Sabrina couldn't help smiling, looking at the portrait. She was 5 years old when they drew the portrait. Everyone looked so happy in the picture. To be honest, Sabrina missed those good old days. Nowadays, everyone in her family was going through a tough time. Letting out a heavy sigh, Sabrina opened the room. As soon as the door creaked open, Sabrina was welcomed with the strong scent of booze in the air. She saw Imelda rolling on the bed with a large mug of rum in her hand. Her hair was a mess, and so were her robes. A wide, stupid grin from ear to ear was plastered on her face. "Diana." Imelda mistook Sabrina for Diana. One couldn't blame Imelda completely. The older Sabrina got, the more she resembled her mother. Since Imelda was drunk to the throat, she thought it was Diana who entered the room. The prankster in Sabrina told her to go along with Imelda and pretend to be her mother. "I brought you something, Imelda," Sabrina sternly said. She surprisingly sounded exactly like Diana. Hence, Imelda had no clue that it was Sabrina who was in front of her. "Sit down." Imelda pulled Sabrina down, forcing her to sit down on the bed beside her. Imelda threw her hand around Sabrina's neck and took a large gulp of rum. "I am so happy, Dien. After a long, long time, I truly feel free." "Why is that?" asked Sabrina. She liked where it was going and decided to pretend to be Diana longer than she initially thought. "What do you mean, why? Our whole family is coming together. When was the last time this happened?" said Imelda. Sabrina was about to ask something else when Imelda shocked Sabrina. "Accept him. Thanks to the gods, I pray." Sabrina creased her brows as Imelda emptied the mug in her hand. "I know I shouldn't say this, but he is a curse, Diana." Sabrina was utterly confused. The words that came from Imelda's mouth didn't make any sense to her. "I even have to call you Diana because of him." Sabrina's instinct told her to refill Imelda's mug. With a flick of her wrist, she transformed the mug to its original size. Sabria drowned a mug into the barrel and handed it over to Imelda. "You can call me whatever you want, Imelda," said Sabrina. At that moment, Sabrina didn't know she was about to be shaken to the core. "Good." Imelda raised her mug before gulping the rum down her throat. Foam and rum flowed out her mouth and drenched her robes. "Harriet Hunt," said Imelda. For a moment, Sabrina couldn't believe what she had just heard. Harriet Hunt was a legend among cultivators. As a student of Trident Academy, Sabrina studied Harriet Hunt and her adventures. It wouldn't be an overstatement to say Harriet Hunt was the most powerful and strongest cultivator of her time. It was really unfortunate that she and her sisters died in an accident. Even to this day, some people believed Harriet Hunt is still alive. Sabrina was one of them. "Why did you call me that?" Sabrina frowned. "It's your name, silly." Imelda knocked Sabrina on the head. After hearing Imelda's words, Sabrina's mind went blank. Confused and bewildered, Sabrina stared at Imelda. Ever since Sabrina was little, she had this strange feeling that her mother was putting on a mask. After she grew up, it felt like Diana was pretending to be someone else. Although Sabrina had grown used to the feeling, Imelda's words brought up everything Sabrina buried deep within her. I am Harriet Hunt. And who are you? Irena Hunt. Once again, Imelda raised her mug proudly, having no idea what she had just done. Silence fell over the room. It took Sabrina a few minutes to collect her thoughts. At that moment, her thoughts were a mess. What she thought would be a good prank turned out to be a life-changing moment. Never in a million years had Sabrina thought her mother was Harriet Hunt. Sabrina stood from the bed and went to the doorway to close the door. Sabrina decided to unveil the secret behind her mother and why she faked her death. Don't you miss our old life? Asked Sabrina. Imelda shook her head. No, I have everything I want here, said Imelda. I am glad you feel that way, Imelda. I just wish I could say the same, Sabrina sighed. You have to let him go, Harry. He is a curse. The moment he came into existence, we lost all the happiness in our lives. Sabrina wondered who she was calling a curse. Judging by her words and the look in Imelda's eyes, Sabrina had this strange, eerie feeling. But Sabrina was afraid of asking her directly, which might reveal her identity to Imelda. Instead, Sabrina decided to take a subtle approach. She put herself in Diana's shoes and thought about what her mother would say at this moment. He is not a curse, Imelda. Aren't we happy right now? I am, but you aren't, said Imelda. You can fool others, Harry, but not me. I know you. My heart bleeds every time you go out there to keep him safe. Yet you forgot he is the threat to all, not the other way around. You don't mean these words, Imelda, said Sabrina. I do, Harry. It's you who has yet to see who he really is. You know what he did to the Barnes. As soon as Sabrina heard these words, she learned who she was talking about. Ghost, Sabrina mumbled under her breath. Don't even say his name, Harry. It's bad luck. Also, don't do anything stupid like trying to invite him, Harry. He brings nothing but death and destruction. Why would I do that? Asked Sabrina. Imelda dragged her words. Because you still think of him as your son. Remember this, Harry. You may have given birth to twins, but you only have one son. It's Noah. Sabrina's heart skipped a beat. Her entire body trembled from head to toe. Sweat beads appeared on her forehead as she shivered. Ghost is my brother. Sabrina's words spanned before her eyes, learning the biggest secret in her life.